All right, board members, so we're up to speed at the moment here. So first thing is to approve the agenda that's before us at this point.
So moved.
And do I hear a second? Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Have minutes from both December 12th and December 20th. Are there any errors or omissions that need to be addressed? If not, I'd take a motion to approve.
So moved.
And discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes
Aye.
have it unanimously.
I can't sit on the first one.
Which one, Lindbergh?
Yeah. Just
Just the first one?
first and second. They go together.
Okay.
Okay, so
All right, so we'll deal with those first.
I'll make a motion to approve 8066, number, T.D. Kochek, and 8067. Deputy, jeez. What is that? How do you pronounce that?
Any VDVG.
Yeah.
Vanna Vidi Vici, okay,
Came, I saw,
Saw
I
it conquered, yeah.
here we go.
Read the
Okay.
whole thing.
I'll second.
Make that motion.
So the motion's made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously.
And I recused.
Right, and Ms. Williams is recused from both those. So you've got 8068 and 8069.
So moved to endorse Pack Family Properties, 3636B of Lilly, and Visco at 3 Rachel Drive.
Okay, do I hear motion's made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Okay. All right, you've got 6 second dwellings before you at this point. If there's no wish to isolate anything out, take a motion at this
Okay.
stage.
Gail.
You have to recuse on that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's make it easy then. So let's deal with Susan Gale with, someone want to make a motion to approve?
Make that motion.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously, and that leaves 5 more.
And I recused, Kathy.
That's right. Thank you.
I'll make a motion per staff approval on Daniels Fernandez 9 North Realty Trust, Pocomo, and 4 Kids Realty Trust.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, and the ayes have it. Thank you. All right, that brings us to previous plans, 22-16, Walter Glowacki. This is a request to rescind the special permit. Leslie, I don't know if you have anything further you want to add.
Where are we, previous plans?
We recommend that you approve the request.
Okay. 4 to 6 Perry Lane. Is there any discussion from the board?
This is previous plans.
Yep, on the
Yes.
previous plans.
I'll make a motion to endorse previous plans per staff recommendations.
Well,
Or you
right
wanna
now,
do them one at a time?
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
just,
if you don't
well,
mind.
Walter Glowacki, 4 and 6 Perry
Sorry.
Lane.
All right. So that motion's made,
Well, they're rescinding it.
yeah, that motion's made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. I trust, did you second that, Nat?
yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
Weatherly Place,
Yep.
Form J, lot release, lot 145. Make that motion.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously.
We have a
21-15?
recommendation.
Pardon?
Yeah, we have something for this.
We have something.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
and I think, Leslie, go ahead.
Yeah.
On 46 Surfside Road, Ed Pesci did a final review of the plans. He had some comments. We received an email from him later this afternoon that said those could easily be addressed through an exchange with him and Mr. Santos, the applicant's surveyor. So we recommend that you endorse the plans, subject to just a final sign-off from Ed Pesci.
So moved.
Okay, second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously.
Oh, Joe's not here.
No, he's gone. He's in Aruba here.
Oh, he's someplace warm.
Yes,
Nice.
he's very nice, yeah. 39-16, Old South Road Crossing, retail liner buildings.
Mr. Chairman, we
Yes,
received a
ma'am.
report from Ed Pesci, and he recommends endorsement of these plans.
Okay?
So moved.
And do I hear? Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. 53-15. which is Gem Realty Trust, MCD.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
a
ma'am.
condition of the special permit was that they had to submit an inclusionary housing restriction to the board. They've submitted that. You don't really need to take any action on it, but I would recommend that you just vote to accept the
So
restriction.
moved.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. 7786 Vine Cliff subdivision, partial release of the escrow.
Mr. Chairman, at a meeting in November, the applicant requested a release of $125,000. The planning board voted to release $100,000, and now we've received confirmation from Ed Pesci that they have met the construction threshold needed to release the remaining funds, so we recommend that you do that.
So moved.
Do I, thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Having 7 ZBA cases before you at this point. Anything you want to feed back to the ZBA?
It seems like they have a comment on one of them.
Well, on 3 of them they actually do.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
there's 2 that we have a recommendation on, file number 0317 and 0417.
Yep.
Those are at 53 and 55 Pochek. The applicant has requested a variance to render the lot subject, sorry, I can't read, to render the lot separately marketable and buildable. We've done some research. We don't really think that variance is necessary and that the board could find that no relief is required. So we would recommend that the planning board make that recommendation.
They cannot be sold. They won't
To the
pass
ZBA.
title without it. They won't pass title without it.
Or
Yep.
in the alternative that they grant the variance.
So, board members, do you have any pleasure about how you want to deal
I
with it?
can't sit on 6 Lily. That's Sconset, looks like it is. And I can't sit on those last 2, obviously.
Okay.
Looks like she's got something to do with Winters.
Hang on.
Why are we doing this again?
Holly wrote the report. I think she was just pointing out that Winters was subject of a planning board application tonight. I don't really
Right.
think there's any need for the board to comment on that one. They're
Yeah.
2 totally unrelated matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, on 0317, which is Lindbergh, and 04-17, Beanie Beanie Beachy, property, what would you guys like to do? Do you want to send a letter at this point? Just to say that we're kind of happy with it.
Yeah.
John, any thoughts?
No negative thoughts.
No negative thoughts, okay. Staff's, I think that was Leslie's request, was just repeated again to me, please.
I think to give it a favorable recommendation, whether it's a variance or a finding that no relief is necessary, either way.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, because usually we can feedback them. So we'll take that as a motion from you, sir?
Yes.
All right, and you'll second?
Second.
Discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 I
Those
recuse from that
opposed,
one.
duly noted. And the rest we're going to take as not really of planning board concern. All right, public hearings. If you're here for 7716 Valero Road subdivision, 58-16 David Barham, or 6-17 Wawinnett Inn LLC, these are all continued to February 13th. So that brings us to 61, Gesundheit, 61-16, which was Hawthorne Park, 46 and 8 Hawthorne Lane, and 3949 to 55 portions, Hummock Pond Road.
I have to recuse.
Okay, duly noted.
Well, it takes an hour for this to download. I have to
So
recuse
she's
on that one
recusing.
from that.
Yeah.
Catherine, this is in 2 parts, right?
Yes, it is.
Where does so I don't sit here for another half hour waiting for it to download part 1. When does part 2 start?
There's page numbers on the agenda, so I can't.
Well, do we know what page number starts section 2? So I don't have to
I
download
I-
1
I think
again.
it's like 185.
Ms. Williams, I downloaded the whole thing as 2 parts.
I know, but I
Yeah.
don't want to bother
And
with
then
1.
Both parts are all the page numbers.
Yeah, you're missing what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's taking
What
me an
page does
hour
it
to get
start?
this to download. If I don't have to download section 1, I'll just start downloading section 2. So I don't know what page section 2 starts on here.
In the computer.
Or page 175 if you don't want to be looking at Hawthorne.
No, and again, you're missing my point.
Is it section 1 or section 2?
What page does
All right,
section 2
thank you.
start on?
They're not sure.
All right, when we split them, we need to do that, because I'm downloading section 1, and it's taking a half hour. If I don't have to download it because we're at the point of section 2, I'd be much happier than wasting time trying to download it,
All right, duly noted.
because it's just sitting here.
All right. Thank you with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Timothy Bennett with Green Seal Environmental, representing...
Can you just come a little bit closer, because
A
you're
little
very
closer?
soft and a little hard to hear. Thank you.
Representing Blue Flag Development, I have here with me Mr. Terry Sanford, with Blue Flag. Just a brief review of the site is 6.5 acres. It's triangular-shaped parcel at the intersection of Hawthorne Lane and Hummock Pond Road, known as the former Larrabee site, if you will. In advance of this proposal, the developer has been and still is performing a substantial cleanup. I just wanted to bring up again. Site is so far removed 500 cars and trucks, 6,000 tires, and 11 derelict buildings, approximately 18 trailer loads of additional miscellaneous debris. So the proposed project is 17 lots flex development. We have an average lot size of 8,200 square feet, and these lots will be restricted to primary dwellings only, and all of which will be on town water and sewer. The homes will be in clusters of 2 to 4 each, so that they have common driveways, resulting in only 3 curb cuts on each street. Last time we were here on this project, the board and staff wanted to have further information on 3 particular items, one being open space, the other being the road surface, and the other being the road alignment at the intersection. We have reduced the lot sizes to achieve a 50.13% open space, which is the functional park and recreation area for the residents. This excludes a proposed pool, cabana, and a gym/field house. Okay. We achieved this by reducing the lot sizes. Item 2, as far as Hawthorne Lane, which perhaps sheet C5 of that set of plans might be. That would be good there. We're proposing to pave approximately 850 feet of Hawthorne Lane to a width of 16 feet with standard bituminous concrete pavement with Cape Cod berm. Drainage will be provided in accordance with stormwater management practices in the form of 2 sets of catch basins, approximately 300 and 600 feet in from the entrance. The third item was the roadway alignment at the entrance, and I don't know if you can zoom in on that. It's a little tough to see, but what we've done is it's at the other end. We've taken some liberties with the location of the pavement within the right-of-way, not centered in the right-of-way, so that we could swing it around to become to create more of a perpendicular intersection there. We didn't want to go outside the right-of-way, obviously, so that I think will be a measurable improvement in that intersection. So there will be no takings, no easements required to achieve that. And we have a proposed sewer, and there was some discussion and information requested for that. It's going to be a low-pressure force main. It's been designed with capacity to handle adding the other existing dwellings that already exist on Hawthorne Lane in addition to our properties. We provided stubs to the existing properties across the street from our property, and we provided capacity for approximately 5 additional homes on Hawthorne Lane in the future. If you could go to sheet C6, you can see that we provided substantial landscaping in addition to the significant effort we made to preserve as many of the existing hardwood trees. We, in fact, went out and located the hardwood trees. We've also widened the driveways to provide better access for delivery and service vehicles. So overall, we think that this is a tremendous improvement over the current conditions. and I think a much more sensitive, much more conscientious plan than the potential 14 A&R approval not required lots, which could result in 42 units with no landscaping, no open space, and no roadway improvements. That sums up what I have to say about it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Board members, any questions at this time? Go ahead. Yeah, go.
Leslie, on the sewer, that they're asking for 5 extra houses beyond what's they're passing. What's the thought on that, staff-wise? Is that adequate?
Well, I don't have a specific thought on it, but I think that they did consult with the DPW director.
Okay, so there was
About
a
that.
coordinator review?
Yeah, we
You
took a
didn't
look
say
at
that,
how many
so-
dwellings were currently on Hawthorne, and it looked at the potential developable lots and guesstimated at 5. It wasn't a precision.
Okay.
We weren't about to calculate how many lots
Okay.
somebody else could get out of their property, but
Got you. Okay.
Okay. Anything else, board members?
The chip seal, Barry. Love the chip seal.
They had mentioned that they were going to do asphalt at this point.
But they can do
Did
that
I
on
hear
top
that
of
correct?
that's correct, yep. Standard
that?
asphalt.
They can do that on top of the asphalt.
Chip seal?
I mean, somebody mentioned it at the last meeting, so I just thought I'd bring that up as just making that decision. We are or we aren't.
I think I've heard the applicants say they are going to do just asphalt, correct?
Yeah, so we discussed doing the chip seal, and the conclusion that we reached with a couple of different partners was that the maintenance and being able to plow chip seal road was going to be an
Yes.
issue, and so that simple asphalt with adequate drainage was going to be a better long-term
Okay.
solution to keep the road maintained in good condition.
Okay.
Good. Holly, Leslie, is there anything you want to add at this stage or anything else?
No, I would like to ask for some clarification on the open space calculation. Does the open space include the deck area around the pool?
No, it does not.
No.
Includes
Okay.
the structures and the pool itself.
Okay.
Hold on for 1 second.
There is another 0.13% available. We calculated it based on just the structures. I don't have the specific numbers on
Okay.
the deck areas.
Okay, great. Anything else? No. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing at this point. If anyone would like to comment, please come forward. Identify yourself for the record. Mr. Collier, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Happy New Year to you, too.
Thanks.
Yeah. Cormac Collier, Executive Director for the Nantucket Land Council. If I could just start through you, Mr. Chairman,
Please.
and express a thank you and appreciation to the proponents for changing the open space to remove the structures and whatnot from the open space calculations. I had some concerns, and I just want to be on record for saying thank you for doing that. I just went over the landscaping plans briefly, and I just wanted to make a real quick point, if I could. They look great. I'm very appreciative of it. I was driving down Hummock Pond Road a few times after this project was proposed, and you'll sort of see on the right-hand side, there's only about 2 or 3 houses all the way down to Larrabee's that aren't vegetated. So having a blend of vegetation in front of this on Hummock Pond Road, and then obviously preserving all the hawthorn lanes for the vegetation out there is very important going forward. I did have a question, though, because this landscaping plan is a little different than what we've seen in the past, where the landscaping plans are actually in the road layouts that are being created, where these landscaping plans are on private lots. And obviously the minutia of you making sure a shad bush is planted here and something is planting there is a little too much, but maintaining a certain buffer, vegetative buffer on the private individual lots, I was curious how you actually were going to be able to do that through the covenant.
If you could scroll to the next sheet, actually. It provides a bit more detail. I'm not suggesting that it answers your question entirely. We have a landscape architect working on a detailed bush by bush and tree by tree count of what the landscaping will be. At this point, we're providing the concept for the special permit process.
I mean, the intent is to put the landscape plan in place and control the whole thing through the homeowners association. What the specific mechanism will be, it hasn't been drafted yet, so I can't say with precision, but the idea is to make sure that the landscape plan as designed is implemented and maintained in its perpetuity. I mean, presumably the HOA as a group could opt to try and change it, but I mean, I think if there were some basic conditions as part of the special permit to maintain, again, that vegetative buffer, I think that's our intent. It's certainly what makes sense. It's going to make sense for a homeowner that's there. So
Yep.
I don't know how to answer it any more precisely, but our intent is to control the whole site in its entirety ourselves, and then turn it over to an HOA that controls the whole thing in its entirety itself. So it won't be up to individual homeowners to maintain their buffer. The whole landscaping plan will be controlled by the project as a group. If that
That definitely answers it. That's a new sort of new concept in terms of the landscaping on the individual private lots is maintained by the homeowner association. Thus, when the detailed landscaping plan gets finished, it should obviously go to staff and be recorded and memorialized through the covenant that the staff is creating. So then that gets goes back to the planning board for another layer of authority, special permit authority that you can enforce going forward. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment on this? All right. Not seeing any raised hands at this point. I think both of you gentlemen have sat on this from the incept of this, right? Okay, good. So, because I think we're pretty close to things, and I don't hear anything necessarily outlying, so consider this both of you activated for this one. All right. So, yeah, please.
Leslie, you got all this down as far as with this last exchange, how we can make this work?
Yes, and we
It's
did
a little
meet.
different than, we haven't done one of these since we changed the bylaw.
Right, and we
Oh.
met with the owners following the last hearing, and we met with their attorney following the last hearing, and we feel confident that all of the concerns that have been expressed by the board and by the public have
Okay.
been addressed.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So, what's the pleasure of the board at this point?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously, and the pleasure of this board.
Motion to approve with the conditions that Leslie has.
Okay.
And the, with that homeowner's landscape to be held once the project is finished, just like they said, how she interprets that,
Mhm.
to be the whole homeowners association to keep that buffer maintained.
Got it.
Second.
Discussion on the issue? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your time.
Much appreciated. Okay, that's going to bring us to 66-16, which is Orange Street Residential, 137, 141 Orange Street. Mr. McKinnon, good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, I'm DJ McKinnon from Atlantic Development. With me tonight is Josh Swirling from Bowler Engineering, Lloyd Bristol from Bristol Transportation, Traffic and Transportation Engineering, and Arthur Reed, our local attorney. Just a couple of updates. Since our last meeting, the HDC has approved the demolition of the existing structures on the property, and we're putting together our package for filing with the HDC for the new structures. We don't have that finished yet, and the buildings and the building footprints that we have on the plan now still represent the locations, but they're not fully defined. Everything that we're working with on the new building plans fits within the footprints that we've shown you and are showing you tonight. But those plans are continuing to evolve. Tonight what we were hoping to do was respond to some of the comments and concerns the board had as it related to traffic, and that's why Lloyd Bristol is here. We have submitted a traffic assessment. I guess I'm going to ask, did that get loaded on the part of the presentation? Okay, great. I appreciate that. Thank you. So we do have that. Lloyd will be doing that first, and then after that, Josh is going to get up, respond to some of the questions that came up at the last meeting as it related to the site and civil and landscaping, as well as give an update on the response to questions and comments that Ed Pesci had. So with that, why don't we ask Lloyd to come up first and jump right into the traffic?
Yeah,
We're not looking to close the hearing by tonight
I
either,
understand.
by the way, because we're still in front of the HDC. Thank
Yep. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Good. I'm glad. It's good to see you.
Beside the fact that it was minus 8 degrees at my house this morning.
There you go. I know.
So my understanding was that there was concern regarding the driveway coming onto Orange Street and how much impact the traffic would have on the Orange Street, because Orange Street is considered to be a busy street, busy arterial. So my study basically focused on what the site would be expected to generate for trips, as well as safety as far as sight distance availability and at the driveway itself, and also consideration, which had been commented on, that you maybe should have the exit go out onto Dave Street rather than Orange Street. So looking at the trip generation for the site, you have to keep in mind that this location is pretty centrally located with many opportunities to walk to shopping, restaurants, businesses if you work and live in these apartments. And during the busy summer months, obviously tenants that are here are going to be accustomed to the fact that it would be difficult to go downtown in a vehicle and try to find a parking space when practically every bus route that's on Nantucket passes right in front of the site on Orange Street, or turns onto Dave Street. There's one. That's the Mid-Island Loop. So we expect that many of the tenants will take advantage of either walking or riding a bike or perhaps the bus system rather than driving a car less than a mile to get downtown and try to find a place to park during the busiest time of the year. So taking that into account, we also looked at, as far as the trip generation itself goes, ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, is the typical. Could you stop on that figure 1? Thank you. Okay. The Institute of Transportation Engineers is the standard that you've heard over and over again, I'm sure, that we rely on. It's basically a database of literally thousands of studies that engineers have sent in data on, and they compile it. And so that gives us a very good idea for different type uses, such as this one, which is a multifamily use, but it's under ITE. It's considered to be low-rise apartments. It's less than 3 stories tall. And it doesn't matter really how many units it has. They give you the data basically on how many vehicles you can expect during the peak hours. Say the peak hour in the morning for 1 hour and the peak hour in the evening when the busiest traffic is already on Orange Street. So looking at the data, basically it says that this site with 16 units could be expected to generate 8 trips in the morning and 10 trips at night. And you can see in this graphic on the top portion is the morning peak. There's a double arrow on the side of the site driveway showing you the 8 trips. Well, that includes both exiting and entering during the peak period. So what we're looking at is they also have a split basically on all these studies that were done. What percentage of the cars leave the site in the morning? Well, naturally, it's expected there are going to be people going to work, so more people exit the site during the morning. So it's 6 vehicles that we can expect to come out of this driveway and 2 entering it. And on the bottom half of that sheet, if we scroll down just a little bit, you can see that there's 11, well, it's really 10 vehicles, but with the rounding of these numbers, they're so small, it adds to 11. So basically it's saying that there would be 7 cars entering and 4 exiting. And the way we split the traffic is if you look at the through movement on Orange Street, you can see that there's 600 heading to the right and 443 heading to the left. That percentage of split basically is how we assign the traffic. Where would they be coming from or going to for the new traffic? So that gives us 4 vehicles entering and 3 from the west or north in downtown area, and 3 from the Rotary area. So that's only 7 vehicles that are on Orange Street entering the site, and 4 exiting, which was pretty much with small numbers like this, we just split it even either way. So that shows you that at the very top of that graphic, you can see there's a double arrowhead that has the total number of vehicles on Orange Street today. That was from data that was supplied by Mike Burns when he had a count collected out there from June 28th through July 5th. And this is an average weekday. It was interesting. I looked at the July 4th holiday, and the count was actually quite a bit lower than during a normal weekday before the holiday. So we used the average for the actual weekday to make sure that we show the proper amount of traffic on that road. So there's over 1,000 vehicles that are on Orange Street if you add both directions today, and we're adding either in the morning 6 vehicles exiting onto Orange Street and 2 having been on Orange Street entering. So only 8 vehicles, and there's in the evening there's only 10 or 11 vehicles compared to 1,063. So underneath the graph you can see what I have is the site PM percentage of through traffic that the site is compared to through traffic. So it's 11 vehicles divided by 1,063 equals 1%. It represents 1% of the traffic that's on Orange Street. And at the top, for the morning, it represents 0.8%. So less than 1% of the traffic on Orange Street would be generated by this site. That's when we're not subtracting anything for people assumed to take the bus, bicycles, or walk to their destination, which we expect many people to actually do that. So the next step is to look at safety as far as sight distance goes. And if we can scroll down a little bit, one more page, I think, there we go. So in this figure, you can see where the site is labeled in the center, and the driveway will be coming out approximately across from the driveway that is across the street or right adjacent to East Creek Road. And looking both directions, basically a vehicle coming towards you needs to be able to see that your vehicle, because you're going to be out in the middle of the road coming out of that driveway. So the vehicle needs to have a sight line long enough to be able to safely stop in case you were to come out and your car stalled and it just sat there in the middle of the road blocking. So I've drawn the lines on here. The straight line with the arrow tips on the ends of it are representing what the sight distance is available. Okay, the requirement is developed basically by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, known as the Green Book, AASHTO Green Book, and they generate, do testing basically with wet pavement, partially bald tires, and see how far a vehicle needs to have sight distance so that it can safely stop. The distance is including that the person sees the issue, perceives that there's a problem, lifts their foot finally and hits the brake, and then the car actually stops by braking. And that distance for a 30-mile-an-hour road is 200 feet. What we have available here is, you can see towards town, a vehicle approaching the site from town can see for over 500 feet. And a vehicle coming from the rotary section can see 430 feet, both of which are more than double what you actually need to safely stop. So there's certainly adequate sight distance. We also took a look at what would happen if the vehicles actually drove off the site by exiting onto Dave Street. That would force everybody to take a right on Dave and go down the one-way street to Lower Pleasant Street. Right at the point where Stop and Shop is, there's a lot of activity on that road. And the other issue, though, is that if the driveway was coming off of our site, it would be pretty close to Orange Street. So vehicles and the wave bus also takes the left turn going northbound to southbound, on northbound to westbound on Dave Street, would be turning the corner and be probably less than 100 feet from the actual driveway itself. So in reality, there's much better sight distance out front onto Orange Street, and the vehicle can see for double what you need versus half of what you really should have by vehicles turning if the exit was onto Dave Street. So basically what it comes down to is that, the site is generating less than 1%, 0.8 to 1% of traffic that is compared to Orange Street current traffic. The site distance is more than adequate, and it's preferred not to have the vehicles coming out onto Dave Street for the reasons that I just stated. So I'd like to answer any questions that anybody has on the report.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I appreciate everything you just said. However, one of my concerns has always been cars stopping in Orange Street trying to turn in. That stretch in the summer is to be avoided at all costs until we get a flyover. Because when you go down in front of Marine Lumber at any particular time in the day, all day, you come to a screeching halt going both directions. And if you've got somebody coming in from, let's say, the airport end, trying to turn left into that, waiting for traffic to stop that's going out of town, they will be there for an hour, and the traffic we backed up through the Rotary all the way to Sconset. That was a concern of mine. I don't know how to avoid it. I guess there's no other way into this property except off of Orange Street. That's just something I just had to say.
Well, that is the safest location, is to come in off of Orange Street. In reality, I understand what traffic is like on Nantucket in the summer. I've certainly experienced it over the years. And the fact that we've got 500 vehicles roughly consistently almost all day long going towards the Rotary, coming out of town, and about 600 vehicles, this is for 1 hour, and 600 vehicles heading into town on Orange Street. Those numbers are not anywhere near what the capacity of the road is. What happens is farther down the road, when you've got to make either go up Orange, continue on Orange Street. If you're coming out of town, you're coming off of Union Street, and basically it ends up slowing traffic down when you've got certainly commercial properties that draw much more traffic than this. This is a residential development where people are going to be right near many of these businesses, and if it's a summertime when the busiest traffic is, the weather is decent, either they're going to take the bus or a lot of them will walk to a very local establishment. So that will cut down on the numbers. We didn't take any credit for that in this report, just to still show you that it's only 8 cars in an hour, and that's the worst hour of the day. And what we chose was the worst hour for the facility, not the worst hour for the cars out front. Out front, they're pretty consistent all day long, these same numbers, like over 1,000 vehicles combined both directions. The capacity of a road is closer to 2,000 cars. All right, if there was no other driveways backing up traffic, this site today doesn't back any traffic up really. It's got one house on there that has a driveway, It's the other businesses in the vicinity that will clog up the system. This site only has 8 vehicles and 10 vehicles basically during the evening peak hour. So that's a pretty light load of traffic. Throughout the entire day, an apartment generally generates 1/2 of what a single-family house will generate for traffic. And the apartments are 2-bedroom. They're not going to be large families in there, with multiple cars, children that are of age to drive. So it's pretty realistic to understand that it's really going to be a pretty light number during any of the hours. And these peak hours are the worst case scenario during the worst month, one of the worst months of the year.
How wide is your curb cut?
Pardon?
How wide is your curb cut? It's not on the,
Shows 13.
I'm still waiting for section 2 to download. It's split between 2 sections.
How wide?
How wide is the curb cut?
It looks like it's 13 from the picture.
20 feet in total.
How many?
20.
And then it flares to probably 24.
Yes.
Okay.
The entry drive.
Still waiting for the second download.
Actual 13. Functional 13.
And the fire pit can leave at any time off this plan.
Is there anything else?
I don't know if this is in your ballpark or the next person to speak. How wide is the entrance in and out of each of these underground parking areas? It looks pretty wide.
Please.
I'm still waiting for
Are there any more
C5.
comments for Lloyd? I can go through the plans and revisions. No? Okay. Great. One more. Yep. We can zoom in.
Missing something. See how the porch wraps around the building here. Here it's over.
So I believe we have,
Comes out.
first comment was the width of the driveway. That's 20 feet at the throat, and then we have 5-foot radiuses on either side, which gives it a 30-foot opening at the street. I believe we have 20 roughly between the openings here underneath the building. And some of that is still pending final architectural layout of column spacing and building architecture. If you'd like, I can go through the other plan comments and responses, although this does not look like it's the latest revision.
Without the fire pit.
Correct.
I really don't think that's just, I think that's within our purview.
It's irritating.
There we go.
Still.
Yep. So, going through the comments that we heard from the board at the last meeting, as well as some other comments, we have extended the sidewalk, if you pan to Dave Street a little bit. That's
Yep.
great. So we extended the sidewalk up to the limit of the property here, and we've shown in a dashed line, because there was some discussion about attempting to connect up to the sidewalk that's out in front of the commons there. I wanted to depict what happens, though, along this side of Dave Street. Our neighboring house that we don't own comes right out
Zero.
basically to the edge of the paving, and the pinch point is roughly 16 feet at that location. So we dashed in, assuming that these are eventually developed by others. We dashed in. I might need that pole. We dashed in the future limits of the extension of the sidewalk, connecting the dots basically from here to here. We've also increased, I think this is a comment from Andrew, but it was echoed by some of the board members. The existing radius is shown in that dashed dark line here, and we've increased that to a 15-foot radius so that it's a little easier getting from Orange Street to Dave Street. We have, oh, sure, and while we're on that subject, you can see that both where we adjusted the radii here, as well as some of the sidewalk that's hugging the edge of Dave Street, it comes onto our property a bit, and the developer is willing to address that either in fee or by easement, whatever the town prefers. We did remove the fire pit, and there's no fountain shown there either. We have shown the location for post office boxes there. I know there's a lot of discussion last time, and in accordance with sort of the thoughts and comments of our neighbor, we added a picket fence along the side and the rear of the parking area here to try to prevent folks from poaching the parking that exists on the Commons lot, as was a concern of theirs. The other items that we've handled in the plans are more technical in nature. There were some lighting comments and some drainage comments from your peer review consultant, Ed Pesci. Did you all get an updated email from him? The last one is dated today. Okay, so I'll just mention that we believe we've adequately addressed all of Ed's comments. There was some back and forth from Ed also relative to making sure that fire was satisfied with access for emergency vehicles. We communicated with them. They are satisfied with access for emergency vehicles. They wanted us to mention to the planning board that we'll continue to work with them relative to beyond the planning board process, relative to utility connections, fire and life safety measures, including utilities, sprinklers, et cetera. The buildings will be fully sprinklered, but they'll want to look at the details of those plans. And they also indicated in their response back to Ed that it would be their preference if there could be some form of emergency access to the commons through the rear, and that they would be willing to participate in future discussions between us and the neighbors, should that be something that...
That's kind of critical.
We've got to think about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Still on
Yeah.
that hunt.
The other items, we've submitted cross-sections that were requested, and if you can scroll, should be all the way towards the end of this. Either last or second to last, I would imagine. Next one. If we can zoom out a little bit. So here are the cross sections. The top one is looking through the site from Orange Street out towards the Commons here. So Orange Street is here. You can see that we're dipping down from Orange Street, which is about elevation 14, down to elevation roughly 12, which is the garage level, and then we come back up to the parking area in the rear here, which is up at about elevation 19. And then we took a cross-section longitudinally across the site, looking at it basically from Orange Street. You can see that we're up at elevation 14. You don't see the cars, but this dashed line here represents the garage level. And then we're showing in the background here the elevation of the at-grade parking area to the rear. And you can see these buildings are shown more as a graphic depiction of the mass of the building, not necessarily the building elevations. And I believe you do have the draft building elevations that Matthew McEachern Emeritus is putting together for purposes of submitting to HDC. There we go. So this gives you a better depiction of what is contemplated. The prior images just sort of graphically indicated the masses. One of the board members had a comment. I apologize, I don't recall which of you, that they would like the building footprints shown on the site plan to truly match the elevations that are shown. The general boxes that we're showing do match. Some of the minor fenestrations of the building aren't 100% identical, but they will be as we continue down this process. Again, the outer box certainly does match. We're working within the constraints that we have, both architecturally and from a site plan standpoint. So the outer dimensions are accurate. Some of the fenestrations in between are still being ironed out.
Anyone else on the board have anything? Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I've got some questions, and it does relate to the elevations in that the elevations relate to the parking as you come in from Orange Street. I mean, just looking at it in its basic essence, you've got a 2-foot drop. You've got basically a one car length to come in from Orange Street, and then you've got space to pull into underneath the buildings with a 2-foot drop over approximately 8 feet. So you've got about a 4-inch per foot pitch. And then what the building mass shows us makes it hard for me to envision, which is why I asked for cross sections, actually how that's going to happen. The cross section that would be beneficial for that would be if, Holly, do you have a cross section? Would be if line B, oh, in the top right. Line B is from left to right on the page, which shows a cross-section at the street. To be functional and useful for us, it would need to be in the middle of the building where the parking area is, so that we could accurately understand what that angle is going to look like, because as it's drawn and what's going on the site, you're not going to have what's drawn is not going to be possible. You don't have a sufficient space for a sufficient pitch to have the parking spaces to the right and the left once you enter under the building. If your elevation of a 2-foot drop from the entryway to the bottom of the parking area. And I'm not mentioning this to be hypercritical. I would like it to work, and I think how things work is you identify shortcomings in advance and you resolve them. And the reason that this relates to the elevations is the elevation shown, the plan shown indicates it appears to me to indicate a porch that dives into the building as you go underneath into the parking area. Whereas the elevations, both that we received today and the conceptuals, show a shed roof covered porch. So there's some inconsistencies which are not material in terms of aesthetic, but material in terms of parking and the functionality of parking. So I personally would just like to see that cross section so we could address it and feel comfortable that we won't have a traffic issue because people pull in and they have one car length before they have to go down this significant dip into the parking area. And then again, the second issue is that there is the parking spaces that are indicated on the drawing. Excuse me.
So if we go to I hear the comment. I actually don't need you to go to the grading plan, but I would point out that the slope that we're talking about coming from Orange Street down the 2 feet is less than an 8% slope, which is a normal slope in parking areas and driveways, etc. So I believe it's over roughly 32 feet. 1 in 16 is generally
Into the parking garage?
from actually let's go to the grading plan or even the site plan if we could. Back up to 5 should do it. Yep, and if we zoom in there,
We have that in our hard copy in our packet.
Yeah, I don't see
but
that.
Of sheet 5, yep.
It's sheet 13.
So we're talking from this point here, which is down at about elevation 12. And coming in from the street, I believe we have roughly 30 feet. And if you go to the next sheet.
No,
that's the
may I
grading
interrupt?
plan. Yeah.
I'm actually not referring to that. What I'm referring to is from the driveway space that leads to the back parking lot, and for the purpose of illustration and identification, if you make a right into the underground area, you're going from 12 feet to at least a foot or more down. From the drawings, it appears like it was 2 feet. But if you're saying that driveway area is a 12-foot elevation,
Yes.
then you're dropping a foot in about an 8-foot space to get in and use the parking spaces to the left and right as you enter.
Yeah, let's go to the grading plan. I think that'll clarify it. The next one, I believe. Yeah. So you can see this is elevation 12 here, and there's elevation 12 contour here. So once you get to the bottom here, this is all flat. Once you are at the face of the building, it's all that elevation 12, which is the garage level, the basement level.
Okay,
So we're coming down 8%. I believe it's even gentler on this side. But from 14 down to 12, that's less than 8%.
Okay, so you've identified the confusion. Holly, could you go back to the elevation sheet? And zoom in on the parking garage, which shows the cars, please. Okay, maybe I'm misinterpreting this, but this clearly says entry drive elevation.
Yeah,
And then it shows the
line should
parking
come
lot
down.
about 2 feet lower. So to me, that indicates that there's potentially an issue with pulling in and having it's not overly dramatic, but it's enough that it could slow people pulling into the parking area, so it slows traffic into the site. So what I simply asked was that a cross-section be shown of the building left to right that shows us what is exactly going on.
Yep. I think we just need to adjust this line. That's causing the confusion. The base of this line should match the base of the garage.
Okay,
We'll clarify that.
thank you. Does that help? They're going to be back before us next meeting.
Yeah, just the numbers don't add up.
Yep. Hold on. Anyone else?
You good there, Nathaniel?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, no. Go ahead.
How many parking spaces are you providing on the site, inside and outside?
We're going to have a minimum of, let me just see, 14 under each building, so that's 28 spaces under the building minimum. Matt's still working on the architectural plan and the column spacing. We might get up to 16 under each building, but we know we'll have a minimum of 14, which is 28 plus 6 additional spaces at grade. So if we have the 28 plus 6, that'll be 34.
How many are you required to have?
32.
Okay. End of story.
Holly, Leslie, is there anything you have for us?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one minor comment. The landscaping along the front property line, along the Orange Street sidewalk, I think at the last meeting the board talked about some kind of hedge, and then I see in this submission that some lower growing planting, some bushes. I would just like for, whatever that is at the end, to be something that either one doesn't grow out and encroach into the sidewalk. It's a heavily traveled area, and it gets really narrow. And to have some kind of agreement in place, maybe a condition in the decision, that ensures that the applicant will maintain that and keep it out of the sidewalk.
And low, so they have visibility.
Yeah. And same thing along Dave Street, wherever there's a sidewalk there.
Good. Fantastic. All right, board. Yeah. board members. Anyways, this is a public hearing, so if anyone would like to comment on this, I'd ask you to please come forward and identify yourself for the record at this time. Okay, hearing no comment.
What's the
Oh,
date?
yeah, Mr. Colley, hold on. No, you've
Okay.
got it. No, just hold it.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just commented on as a private citizen, not land
sir.
council. Let me see how I can formulate my thoughts. Obviously, this property just got put into CMI, Commercial Mid-Island District, which we all supported at town meeting with the intent that we were going to create more housing opportunities for, let's not use affordable, let's use workforce as the word going forward, workforce housing. And there's no requirements at all for the applicant to make it workforce housing. So this could end up being rented for people visiting, tourists visiting the island on a seasonal basis. And I'm not really asking the planning board for anything, but I guess how can we use this project going forward, assuming that there's going to be many other projects going forward, to provide us with data that it actually our intentions were actually met in terms of providing workforce housing. I don't think you can require them, obviously, to make sure that it's workforce housing. There's nothing that would let you do that. So I'm not asking for that. Maybe I'm just asking that there's some ability for the planning board to work in the future to be able to get data from the entity that owns the project. It might not be the developer at that point, where we'll have an understanding whether it's rental, workforce, seasonal, or whatnot. Because as I see it, I think there's great potential in the CMI district for future developments to provide workforce housing. I just would like to see how these all develop in a more holistic sense and not just sort of fragmented. Just a comment. That's all it was.
Right. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wishing to comment on this? All right.
Motion to
So-
continue to February 13th.
There you go. And do I hear a second to that? Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that brings us to 1-17, Daniel and Susan Mack, 3 Sturgis Pine Lane. I don't know if anyone's here for the applicant. Go ahead, Leslie,
Okay,
please.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant's seeking to convert a basement portion of their secondary dwelling into a tertiary dwelling. It slightly exceeds the 650 square feet. It's about 747 square feet. I think some of that is because of the gross floor area measurement. This is a neighborhood where infill should be encouraged. It's in the Mid-Island. Staff recommends approval.
Okay. Board members, is there any discussion on this? You've heard staff's proposal at this point.
Motion to approve. Or is
Public
it-
hearing.
Oh, it's a public hearing.
Public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this? Not seeing any comment now.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Yeah. Do I hear a second? Discussion? Oh, sorry. Carl, I'm going to put you on this one. Thanks. So, motion is made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? ayes
Motion to
have it.
approve per staff comments.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Brings us to 2-17, Somersault LLC, 13 Westover Street. Hi, John.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
How are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
For the applicant, Attorney John Brescher, what we have before us this evening is a special permit application pursuant to the Nantucket zoning bylaws section 139.8C in order to create a secondary residential lot for year-round housing. As you can see from the picture on the screen, the address is 13 West Dover Street. We're also requesting special permit relief pursuant to section 139.8C3H so that each lot may have its own off-street parking. This property, interestingly, has a zoning board of appeals decision on it because the lot to the, I guess it's the east here, was a studio. They were actually, originally they were both pre-1955 structures, but the one directly to the east had so many additions added onto it, the 4181L subdivision was not possible. Nonetheless, when...
Back that up again.
Sure.
Why isn't 4181L appropriate here?
Because the studio was improved too much. It was originally like a garden shed, and then they kept adding to it in the 70s.
So it was too insignificant even to count when it was sitting by itself, arguably.
Arguably, but the number of improvements that they made over the course of the last 60 years would render it inapplicable for 4181L. Nonetheless, they received Zoning Board of Appeals relief to convert the use from studio to residential, and they applied to the Planning Board in December of 2014 for a secondary dwelling application, at which time they also asked for special permit relief from the Planning Board for its own curb cut. So basically there would be 2 curb cuts on this lot. From the plan that I've submitted from Blackwell, it shows the location of a proposed curb cut. It has come to my attention that the curb cut actually exists, so we will be getting you we can get you a revised plan, but I believe that's the general location of it. Otherwise, it is not habitable currently, that in the sense that it does not have a CO for human habitation. I believe the plan is to make the necessary renovations to the studio to convert it to legally convert it to a dwelling. Nonetheless, they're requesting the special permit to create the secondary lot for year-round housing. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Okay, board members? Not saying anything from your perspective, Leslie?
We recommend approval.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this. Yeah, come on down. Howdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Debbie Dilworth, for the record. I'm the abutter to the immediate west there. Just a couple of concerns. I was unable to find any proper permitting, but I guess there was something in the planning board file. I was going to mention that the space has already illegally been constructed, and it's partially located within the road. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you're all familiar with Dover Street. It's also known as I-95. It's a very, very busy street, especially in the season when the shuttle buses round that corner. So I would be... my recommendation would be to, has the Traffic Safety Committee looked at this? I'd like to see what their opinion is on this. As right now, it's my opinion that it's unsightly and unsafe. People actually have to almost get into the road to get into their vehicles. And I note that the property is being marketed subject to your approval this evening. I was going to mention that there is plenty of room on site to provide the driveway with the turnaround. However, it would preclude them from maximizing the future development that they're advertising in the listing.
Okay, thank you.
That's mine.
Ms. Brescher, do you have anything you want to pro-offer there?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if traffic safety reviewed the location of the curb cut. As I said, the curb cut was shown on the plan when the secondary dwelling was applied for in 2014. And again, Ms. Dilworth is correct that from the plan, it would appear as though it is partially within the roadway layout. However, as indicated on this plan, it appears as though it is shown as a proposed parking space, and as the parking space exists, I believe that a updated survey would be prudent to see exactly where it is located.
Okay. Great. Anyone else wishing to comment on this? Yeah, go ahead.
I think I don't want them pointing their nose out. They can't really make the turn. I think that where it gets really narrow there, and when it comes down the hill and there's substantial grade changes on both sides. I think pulling in, some of the smaller streets in town don't have nose in. They're this, just pull in and pull out. So they're going with the flow of traffic as opposed to trying to nose out or trying to back out. I think 2 horizontal spaces are better. One's already there. I assume the other one is going to be over in front of the other house. What's going to become a house. I think that works better. Doesn't quite have, I don't think it has the land, and it's got a tree there and there's bushes there. I don't know if it's flat enough to actually get off the road without forcing it to back out before it falls into the pit in between what's on Silver Street, I think it is, and what's on West Dover Street. It's got some logistical nightmare to it. So I'm not exactly sure how we would get them onto the lot, turn around, and then nose back out. I'm just not sure if that's possible. And we did look at this in 2014, and we knew that there were 2 structures, 2 potential dwelling units. And I think we gave you the relief for the second curb cut, didn't we?
Yes, you did.
So we've already basically done this. What's brought this back in here is that now it's not 1 lot, it's separating into 2 lots.
That's correct.
Two already granted curb cuts. 2 structures already granted, primary and secondary. And now what's happening is that you're drawing a straight line, a hard line instead of a dotted line for a covenant. You're going to the secondary lot, which we haven't really seen in town in the old historic district yet on these smaller lots.
Right.
So this is sort of the first time we've run into this on a OHD lot, an ROH lot.
Yeah.
So I would have a hard time taking back what we already gave almost 3 years ago now. So I'm sort of struggling with that. I understand the traffic issue thoroughly because I go down it almost every day, and Debbie goes down it almost every day.
Yep.
So it's a tricky spot, period.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Schneider, number 10 West Dover Street. I'm here to back up a letter I sent via email that I fully support a parking space here. Because what hasn't been mentioned is no sidewalks at all. One-way street, very busy. Every house has to, whether it's a dwelling by itself, a covenant, whatever it needs, if it's a dwelling, whatever you want to describe it as, it needs a parking space. It would be helpful if this photograph showed the current conditions, because there is an existing parking lot. Now, is it a requirement for 2 spaces or just 1 space for each lot, ultimately?
When they split, they're 1 for each lot, isn't it?
It's 1 for each lot in the
Yeah,
ROH.
when they split up.
Okay. It says the new, previously permitted existing parking lot on the lot that would ultimately be on the right is parallel, just like the little red car, which is Don's old car that's been there. It's now gone, but it's exact same sort of layout as the existing parking lot, and I highly recommend allowing it, because if you were to nose in, there's an elevation change from the street of about 4 feet. And once they go down, especially this time of year, they're not going to be able to get back out, and they're going to have to do it at 20 miles an hour, and that's just, you're asking for trouble. So basically, it would be nice if they would show the existing, but the existing is fine, and I would just, as a neighbor who walks the street every day with his dogs and goes from driveway to driveway to driveway, avoiding cars that are coming down the street, I would highly recommend allowing a driveway parking lot for this lot.
Jeff, these are from 2014,
Yeah.
so they haven't been up.
No,
the
it's
most
been
recent
opened
area
up
we,
and backfilled and
yeah,
retaining
most
wall
recent
and all
area
that.
we have is this one, and it's
Yeah.
it's 3 years old now.
I wouldn't expect you to go backwards on what's already existing and permitting. I just wanted to make sure I came here and said, please give them a parking lot space, because if not, honestly, they're going to be parked in my driveway, which is what's happening now, because
You have the biggest driveway on the street.
yeah, and that's fine, I get it, but each of these houses actually usually has 2 cars. 1 car looks good, and it looks good on numbers, but there's usually at least 2 cars in one house, so at least 1 parking space has got to happen, and I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else in the audience wishing to comment on this? Hearing none, pleasure of the board at this point.
I just have one comment.
Yeah, please.
Mr. Chairman. John, maybe the gentleman, Jeff Schneider, that just stepped would be able to answer this question better. The parking, as we're hopefully representing what it's going to look like, is there any obstruction from the vegetation that's in front of it that might be a benefit to cut back on if we're going to be parallel parking in there? From this, so this is 2014, and I'm looking for more of an updated answer.
There's already a space up there that's cut out.
Right, but we don't have that privilege
No,
to see
'cause we
that.
don't have a recent
But
area.
that's, maybe Jeff can answer, as being that he's a neighbor.
It would be their issue to look first before they pull out, but I honestly wouldn't ask for or recommend widening the road to make it easier for people to go faster.
Okay, just cutting back on vegetation, everything is,
Yeah, it has maintained, it's fine. You can
Okay.
see the car when you come around the corner, you can see the driveway as you're coming down the hill.
Right.
But, you know, it's just, we need a parking space there. It's just,
Right.
gotta have it.
thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Walsh, I'm going to activate you on this since it is a special permit. So, pleasure of the board at this point?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Do I hear a second? Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. And the pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve. Leslie, can we put on a condition about keeping the vegetation low or away from the parking areas?
Do you want to do your standard condition about vegetation being no higher than 3 feet?
Yeah, whatever the standard is.
Okay.
And do we have to say that these spaces need to be entirely on the lots and not in the roadway layout?
The surveyed plan that was submitted shows the required parking space entirely within the lot, but there's, space between the lot line and the traveled
Oh, yeah.
surface of the road that has to be filled in, so, and that's the way it's shown.
Just make sure you have a legal parking space on both lots.
Absolutely.
Off the layout of the
Yeah.
road.
Okay. So that,
Mr. Chairman.
just where, right now, I've kind of closed the public hearing at this point, so thank you.
No problem.
Appreciate it, though. So, is that your motion then?
Yeah.
Linda?
They can be parallel, but just that there's some legal space entirely on the property.
Mr.
Let
Chairman.
me just get a second, Leslie, and then if you don't mind. Or is this going to be changed to motion?
It may involve changing the motion
All right,
slightly.
so go ahead then.
Okay,
So you can hold back.
The parking space shown on Lot 1 is entirely on the property, but does not meet the zoning requirements. And I think they have relief from the ZBA for that already.
For
That's-
lot 1?
Lot 1, the 7-foot by 20-foot space.
I think lot 2 is.
I'm not sure. It might have been grandfathered, frankly. That it's been there for so long that matter didn't come up.
So if your motion includes both spaces being legally conforming, that space will need to change. My point.
It's right up.
Right, I
really
don't-
on the house.
Does
I mean,
that-
it's-
does
yeah.
the compact car park the 7 feet?
It's not quite 7
six.
feet.
It's 6 feet. Yeah.
So the existing parking on Lot 1 shall be maintained. The cause a new parking space on Lot 2 needs to show that it's completely on the property,
Correct.
okay?
Yep.
So that did change my motion slightly.
Okay. Again, the vegetation as well, too. is included.
Vegetation,
Okay,
yeah.
great. So,
Second.
second, is
on
there
the motion.
discussion on the issue? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to 3-17, Ronald and Ellen Winters on 12 Gardner Street. Is there anyone here for the applicant? Hi, how are you?
I'm Ron Winters on 12 Gardner Street. I purchased the house about...
Ron, you gotta really put it up to your mouth and speak right into it, because the TV cameras pick it up.
Okay. We purchased the house about 4 years ago, and the driveway configuration was as you see it on that. I tried to negotiate with the owner to widen it, which previous owner, and he said it had been wider and he had closed it down. But it was very difficult to get into. The road is only 15 feet wide, and he had the driveway at about 14 feet or 15 feet wide at the entrance. And the neighbor's fence directly across the street is exactly on the pavement. So I have a pickup truck, and I'm a notorious bad driver, and decided that we needed to pull the hedge that he put in there and just widen the driveway. It created an extra parking space, and made the access, so you could get in there. We're going to the ZBA for an application to put a second dwelling on the property for my mother-in-law, which we're going to convert our garage into a small dwelling. And we feel that we really need to maintain that wider entrance off the road. You can see my neighbors have a 24-foot wide driveway at their house. It's absolutely necessary to do. Also, the history of this property, there was a barn in this location that I actually have letters from the Moynihan sisters arguing with the former owner about the right-of-way to their barn, and ended up having to negotiate with him to give him an extra 12 feet of width for his entrance to the barn, which is kind of funny. And, I just hope the board would understand that we just really do need the entrance to remain as wide as it is.
Board members, any discussion on this issue? Okay, anything, Leslie or? Yeah, Linda, what do you need?
I'm just looking at the planning staff recommendation.
Yeah.
Leslie, look at it, at least the one that's up on my download. I assume, Ron, that your apron runs the full width?
It's, I asked the surveyor, it's exactly scaled to plan. The bound to bound is 30 feet. It looks like the apron's maybe 24.
Yeah, Leslie, take a look at number 2 and number 3 on the staff recommendation. I don't think those are going to work.
There's not a 2 or 3. I think you may be flipping the page. There's a page break at the end of 12 Gardner Street. It just says staff recommends approval.
Okay, well, I'm looking at what came in on the packet. And the packet's the problem. Because it can't be 15 feet and 12 feet and 10 feet and all that other stuff.
I think that's
For
the next
the
application for list select.
Well, then I have a random page
Yeah.
before I even, the page is falling in between their aerial, 263, and their abutters list in the packet. So I have a random 264 that doesn't belong with this one, sitting in the middle of his packet. Just saying.
That may be, I think that's from the second,
Yeah.
not sure what that is,
Nope.
but if you look at
So I'll go
the
to
staff
what you say.
report, it doesn't have any conditions. It just says staff recommends approval.
Fine.
That's what we recommend.
So it's a
Just
little
approval.
confusing here because I'm going through this packet one page at a time.
Okay. All right. So,
See what I'm talking about? It's in the middle of the packet.
Okay, so we're back to, we're making a specific condition list.
No conditions.
Not where, you know what I mean.
So,
Well, that still
Yeah.
doesn't apply to
So-
what we're doing.
right.
so for this, we recommend that you approve the site plan as it's shown, that you approve the wider driveway, and that you approve, if you want to, the 7-foot deep apron. I mean, the
And-
board does typically require that it be at least 10 feet. but-
And this is, Leslie, this is, if I'm going to make that motion, we haven't even closed the public hearing yet, right? But if I was going to make that motion, it would be based, so not everybody else is coming wandering in here for a 24-foot wide driveway, which we don't usually allow anywhere, whether it's out of town or in town. We need to have specific findings that logistically it's difficult to get into. It had been I remember when it was a wider driveway. It had been a
Yeah,
wider
my
driveway
neighbor
at one
sent-
point.
The neighbor sent in a letter
Yeah.
that lives right next door.
It had been
remembering that.
almost the full width of shell or whatever it was.
Yeah,
a
it was
Keystone.
actually, it was 48 feet wide originally.
Yeah. And
when
so
the
I
barns
think-
were there.
I think
have
we
a-
need
I
to
have
put-
an old picture of it right here. If
We
you
need
want
to put
see
the
it.
findings in that we're doing it because it was wider at one point. Logistically, it's difficult to get into because of the narrowness of the street and the fencing across the street and all the other stuff. So we
Okay.
don't get everybody else flooding in
I
here. I
understand
want
what
the
you're
full
trying to
width.
I think the road width is the key problem.
It is.
Yeah.
So whatever findings we can throw in here to back up why we're doing it in this specific situation, I think is necessary so we don't set some sort of a free-for-all, especially his truck. Because he went up the street looking for it today. I sent him up to Howard Street. Okay. That's all I have to comment.
Anyone else in the audience wishing to comment on this?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Motion to approve with those findings to support the approval.
Great. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brings us to 4-17, The Select Properties, LLC, 3 South Mill Street.
Good evening. Whitney Gifford, representing Lay Select, homeowner. This is another one of those we need to legitimize what had been an existing studio, had been expanded back in the late 80s and has been treated as a cottage and actually occupied since. We're looking for specifically relief from 139-2, the definition of a second dwelling, specifically the scalar separation between the main structure and the secondary dwelling. The timeline here, Holly, if you want to go back to that first slide, is the 1970 A&R plan, which shows the structure sideways as just a studio. For those of you familiar with the area, this was a property owned by Maggie Meredith, local artist, and this was legitimately an artist studio. And she used it, painted there, showed things for sale there. In 1987-89, the studio structure was expanded by adding storage. And Holly, if I get the next one. At that time, a kitchen, a bathroom with shower was added to it, and that is currently the current footprint. Again, in 2016, we have an A&R showing the structure as a cottage, and this is currently the way the Lay Select properties lay out. The plan that accompanied the application shows that we have 3.47 square scalar feet of separation between the two structures. We're asking that the board finds that the separation is indeed in harmony with the general intent of the zoning bylaw and the neighborhood. The only questions that we have are related to the requirements from staff regarding the driveway. Again, because of the fact that this was a driveway that has been continuously used for over 30 years, and even though Jeff Blackwell put a proposed apron in there, there is a concrete berm to the edge of where he's got that. If you extended the sidewalk, there's a concrete berm with enough of a lip that the gravel does not come down that hill and out into the street. So it's functioning as, and has continued to function as, a apron. And we had Jeff put that in there to show that it met the current requirements. So we would ask that the driveway requirements, as pointed out in staff recommendation, be waived. I have Jess Bell here, who's an abutting neighbor and the manager of Lay Select, if the board has any questions.
Yep, go ahead.
I was in the studio when it was Maggie's studio. I'm sure you were. We both grew up here.
Right.
And then I was in it after Chris got old enough to move his music studio out there. And then Chris started to live in it. And then over time it got a little bit more fancy, a little bit more livable. And then Chris bought his own property out near me. So he has a studio out there. And it was always used as sort of a bunkhouse after that. And then it's been upgraded because I was in it not that long ago. And it meets all
the other dimensional
all
requirements.
dimensions. It's got a kitchen, it's got a dining room, it's got a living room, it's got a bedroom, it's got a bathroom. I mean, it's a lot fancier than it was when it was his bunkhouse in his studio. I don't have any problem with this. It's isolated back up on the hill. I don't have a problem waiving the driveway requirements. It's perfectly adequate. And then you've got a lot of grade changes and retaining walls up there. So I'm perfectly comfortable with the way this lays out.
Anyone else on the board? Leslie, Holly, anything you want to add at this stage? No? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this. Mr. Cohen. Good evening, sir.
Just a quick question. I represent actually the contract purchaser, and I don't have any objection, but there's a requirement for an as-built, and I think that if the apron is waived, then the as-built is only to show the apron, so I think they run in tandem.
Yeah, I was sort of asking for a waiver of all of the requirements in the staff recommendation, the as-built being one of them. But thank you for pointing that out.
Okay. Anyone else in the audience wishing to comment on this?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. Oh, Mr. Borchert, let me try to think here just for a second, because, yeah, this is a special permit. So I'm just going to bring you on board for this. So motion is made and seconded to close the public hearing. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously.
Motion to approve waiving, Leslie, I guess everything. That makes sense?
Yeah, so the approval would be with no conditions.
With no conditions.
Discussion on the issue. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Brings us to 5-17, which is West Myacomet Road, nominee trust 50 West Myacomet Road. Anyone here for the applicant? I'm going to take that as...
Paul's here.
Paul, are you for...
Paul, you coming?
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, representing the applicant, also Rick Bodette, attorney on behalf of the current property owner and the applicant. This is a MMD special permit request for some alterations to the existing, essentially second dwelling, if you will, located at 50 West Myacomet Road. There are presently two structures on the property. There is a cottage oceanside here, and there is an existing dwelling that is up on West Myacomet Road. This was actually the initial structure on the property. This one was constructed as a second dwelling on the property. The original zoning for this property was Lug 2. It had the benefit of a zone freeze at the time of the MMD adoption. So therefore, both structures are in excess of the current requirements for 800 square feet of ground cover and 400 square feet of decking and so forth. Holly, if we could go to the site plan.
Paul, who's the owner?
Current owner. Property just recently sold. Current owner is 50 West Myacomet Road, nominee trust.
Who was it before?
Sohn. Dr. Sohn?
That's because we both knew that.
Yeah, this was Dr. Sohn's property. So, as I said, it was a subject of a subdivision at the time that was had the benefit of a zone freeze under the Lug 2 zoning district. So the property itself contains an area of approximately 79,235 square feet to current mean high water. The property
obviously has some restrictions with regard to coastal resources. We have a coastal dune in this particular area here. We have the requisite 25, 50, 100-foot setbacks that are subject for the local conservation commission and state regulations. All the work, though, is proposed to take place on the existing dwelling, which is located up on Westmire Comet Road, and I'll walk you through what those changes are. There is an existing wraparound deck along the backside or the ocean side of the dwelling, and there's a second floor deck in this particular area here. They are looking to stay within the footprint of the existing deck, but add a second floor feature to that deck. There was a hot tub that existed at this point here. Currently there exists a concrete pad that will be removed. That's approximately a 30 square foot removal of impervious area along the back side of the structure here. The structure is actually constructed with a garage in this area here. It's actually a drive-through. It has an overhead door here, has an overhead door in this area. There's a concrete pad at both of those points when you drive in and drive out of the garage. The intent would be to remove the concrete pad or impervious area along the ocean side of the structure. That's approximately 20 square feet of impervious that would be removed. However, they would be adding, again, a small second floor balcony at that point, which would be elevated up on the second floor. The proposal then is to also construct to break up some of the massing in the front of this structure, was to construct a covered porch along the front side of the dwelling, and then add some exterior AC units in this particular location here. It is in the MMD. There is a 50-foot front yard setback requirement. The porch would be inside of that 50-foot requirement. However, it would not be any closer than the existing. It's approximately 46 feet from the street line here to the edge of the dwelling at its closest point. The proposed porch would be no closer than that setback to Westmire Comet Road. Again, the side yard setback is 50 feet in the MMD. However, this is a lot of record, so it would be subject to a 25-foot setback. Again, the second floor deck, though, would not extend any further than the existing decking inside of the side yard setback. That's the proposal. It is not an expansion of ground cover per se as far as living area. It's simply an expansion of decking or covered porch, which would not count as ground cover on the existing structure. We have asked for a special permit and relief pursuant to Section 13913C1, which is a special permit to construction or alteration of a dwelling greater than 800 square feet and accessory structures and uses, including approval or waiver of site plan review. 13913E, which would be site plan review. 13930A, which is the MMD special permit and site plan by the planning board, and 13933A, which is an alteration of a pre-existing non-conforming use and structure. With regard to looking at the balance here with regard to removal of impervious area, we're looking at a removal of 50 square feet of impervious area, which are the concrete apron for the former hot tub, the concrete apron for the garage, and we are adding approximately 90 square feet on the proposed porch area. The AC units are de minimis. They're probably 2.5 feet by 2.5 foot square. They would be located outside the setback, and they'd be located screened in this portion of the dwelling right here. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have with regard to the proposal.
Paul, who's the architect on this?
Botticelli and Pohl.
So it has nothing to do with what you and I did last year for a different prospective buyer.
Correct. This is something.
Whole new ball game.
This is different.
New people,
So, yeah, that
new
property
everybody.
was the property was sold to a different buyer. Botticelli and Pohl is the architect working with them.
Anyone else on the board have any comment on this? Leslie or Holly, do you have anything you want to add?
No, we recommend approval.
All right. This is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, if anyone would like to comment on this. Seeing no one.
Motion to close the public hearing.
And this is a special permit, so, Mr. Welch? Great. So, motion's made, second to close the public hearing. All those, discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it unanimously, and the pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve.
And do I hear a second? Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Great.
The next door neighbor.
So
thank you.
7-17, Cameron L. Cowan and Patricia J. Cowan, 48 West Comet Road. Yeah. So no one for the, yeah, that's okay. Just wanted to be sure. I'm sorry, Paul. Don't mean to rush.
No problem. Thank you for the applicant, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, representing the contract purchaser of the subject property. Property is currently owned by Cameron Cohen and Patricia Cohen. Steve Cohen, different spelling, it represents the contract purchaser. He's with me tonight. And Rhoda Wyman represents the project owner, and she's also in the back, I think, and is available for any type of questioning. This is a similar application to what we just spoke about. In fact, the property is in a butter 250 West Comet. Again, this is an existing, pre-existing lot located in the MMD district in which a single-family dwelling is constructed tight to this property line here. And we are asking for special permit relief for improvements on the existing property. And if we can go to the site plan. Okay, thank you. This property, a little bit different with regard than to 50, whereas this is did not have the benefit of a zoning freeze, but was a pre-existing non-conforming lot. So it's a lot of record. It's actually a parcel of land that is comprised of two particular parcels. The division line, there is a parcel here, and then there's an add-on parcel down here, which is basically all coastal resource area and beach, if you will. So it's a parcel of land in single ownership comprising two land court parcels. Again, coastal resource area is a coastal dune in this particular area here. The proposal is to take the existing structure, pick it up, move it onto the lot, centered on the lot to conform to the current side yard and front yard setbacks. Will be approximately 65 feet or so to either sideline. The dwelling will be constructed on this portion of the lot here. Decking will be all the same. The ground cover for the particular lot right now is 1,410 square feet, and there is approximately 1,075 square feet of decking, landing, stoops, and stairways on the existing structure. We would be relocating. The existing driveway is a turnaround in this particular area here. We will be relocating the drive to this location here. This would be revegetated along the front. Existing septic system would stay in place. It's a passing system. It's been inspected just recently. We are asking for, in this particular case too, though, a 200 square foot ground cover exempt for the purposes of zoning shed to be constructed in this particular area here. So in addition to the relocation, renovation, addition of the foundation, we are also asking for a freestanding 200 square foot shed in this particular area here. By way of history kind of in this area, this is the Peacock parcel here, which is currently being reconstructed. That was approximately a 1,500 square foot dwelling. There is now new construction going on here, full foundation with a 200 square foot ground cover exempt shed in the front. So it's a similar proposal to what was done on the Peacock residence located to the east. Again, MMD special permit. Relief under 139.13 for the special permit for construction or alteration of a dwelling greater than 800 square feet. An accessory structure and uses, including approval and a waiver of site plan review. A 139.30 MMD special permit and site plan by the planning board. And again, 13933, alteration of a pre-existing non-conforming use and structure, including removal and reconstruction thereof. In this particular case, the only nonconformity that would continue would be the issue of ground cover and the decking. We would be completely compliant with the zoning setbacks for both side yard and front yard. The proposed shed would be set back in excess of 50 feet from the front yard of Meyer Comet Road. This particular proposal has also been recently filed with the Conservation Commission. All this work will require approval from the local Conservation Commission and also the state under the endangered species under MESA requirements too. This area is completely mapped for MESA, and those approvals are ongoing. They will also have to file here with the HDC, and I don't believe that has been done yet. And happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yes, go ahead. And then.
Was this Cafaro's?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Was this Cafaro's?
That, I don't know how far back. I don't. It's Cohen now. I don't know if it was.
Because you had Peacock, Cafaro, Sohn, when we were in court with forever back in the 80s.
Yeah.
There should be, if this is Cafaro's, because on Peacocks there are ZBA variances on both these lots. Did you find
this one
that?
does not have a ZBA variance, oddly enough. The only thing that
they also own the one across my comment.
The next application we're going to talk about is 49. That's still owned by 49. There's not so much ZBA variances, but there are agreements in place with regard to development on the property.
There's a settlement on record, not a variance, but yeah. This, you may recall, this house was actually several hundred feet water, what's now water, what used to be land.
Yes, and it
was eroded and relocated, 20 years ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an issue with any of this.
Anyone else on the board? Comment? Leslie?
Mr. Chairman, on all of these MMD special permits, we do need to include typical conditions that are included on all of the decisions in the MMD about construction exclusions in certain times of year, lighting, that kind of thing.
Because we did on Peacocks. There's the growing season or the molting season or the nesting season or something out there.
We have some boilerplate ones that we use for all of them. I just want to point out that those will be included.
I do have a couple of quick points I just want to make for the record. One is that the original application stated that the house would be relocated outside the 100-foot buffer. That was based on a prior survey. Now, because of erosion, it's actually within the 50. We've just lost enough land, so I wanted to just correct that for the record. Secondly, I want to make it clear that the house is going to go on a full basement, not just a foundation, so that we don't have an issue at the building department later with that issue. I don't think it's an issue for you, but I just wanted to say it into the record. And then the last thing is that the house has 1,410 square feet right now, and my client would like to go to get permission to go to the full 1,500. We do know that we'd have to come back with whatever details that are, but if there's going to be any objection to it, we'd rather know now. It's only 90 square feet, so I don't think you'd really care, but I just wanted to bring that up so that we don't have an issue later.
Okay.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a public hearing, so if someone would like to comment on this. Seeing no comments.
Motion to close the public hearing.
And Mr. Borchert, you're up on this one. So the motion is made and seconded for discussion to close the public hearing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve up to 1,500 square feet.
Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Great. That brings us to 8-17, Cameron and Al Conwin and Trish L. Cowan, 49 West Meyer Comet Road. Gentlemen.
Again, for the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, Steve Cohen representing a contract purchaser.
This is on the land side.
This is the land side, 49 West Meyer Comet Road.
Both sides like the Cafaros did, but it's a whole different lot over there.
Yeah. And Rhoda Wyman also here tonight representing the current owner, Cameron and Patricia Cohen. This is 49 West Meyer Comet Road, which is a parcel directly across from 48. Actually, a parcel of land that's in the same certificate of title to that being held at 48. It is just separated by West Meyer Comet Road. This is a vacant parcel of land, again, pre-existing non-conforming lot located in the MMD district. This lot has a existing driveway which services a dwelling to the rear of it. That's through a valid easement that goes over the current lot. Holly, if we could go to the site plan. This is, again, an MMD special permit request for, in this particular case, okay. Well, if we can go to the aerial, Holly, I can. Yeah. What this is, again, Steve had made reference to a settlement agreement that has effect of 48 and 49 Westmire Comet Road. Part of that settlement agreement is that at no time, if there is no time, this lot cannot be constructed on unless the house at 48 has been removed from that subject property. So the application before you here is an application in which the house on 48 would be relocated to 49. It's the same exact footprint, 1410, with the appropriate decking that would be moved completely to 49.
And a new one on 48.
There cannot be a new one on 48. So once, I think, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but the settlement agreement basically says that if there cannot be constructed a home here unless the one on 48 is gone.
But we just moved the one on 48.
Well, we relocated it on its own lot, but if such time as the shoreline erodes and the owner wants to take this lot and move it to here, then we're here to discuss movement of the lot over to this one here.
As with the original settlement, is title, the two lots are being transferred in the same title again?
Yeah, that's right. So these lots
'Cause
are
I
held
remember
in,
that settlement well.
yeah, these lots are held in common ownership, and they're being sold essentially that this eroding lot has a retreat lot. And so what we want to do is just prove the point that if the house is going to be moved to the other lot, that there's no problem with doing that. I don't think that there is, but I want to make sure, because what we're doing is essentially taking a vacant lot and moving a larger house there. So we want to make sure that the ability to use this as a retreat lot is approved by you, even though the intent is not to do that now because the erosion is not problematic now.
Well, just a couple of things on that one. I do remember this like it was yesterday. It's back in the 80s, I think, 89,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. I've been here too long. The permits that we grant only go for so long.
Right.
If the house doesn't have to be moved within so much time, because we're giving you permission to actually make it a buildable, separately built, buildable lot, whereas the other one comes off it and moves over there. If it doesn't move within those 2 years, you're going to have to come back and do this again.
Right.
So this is just a preemptive strike for the new owners to figure out that this is possible. We grant it once, chances are we'll grant it a second time.
Yeah, and to flush out the issues in terms of what the concerns the board might have, what the neighbors might have, which the land council, which holds the settlement agreement, what issues they might have. This is essentially to flush out what the permitting and regulatory concerns are. The intent is not to build two houses, and that settlement does not currently provide for that.
We have to go back to court and everything.
Right. So the intent is to just make sure that, to the extent my client is buying what he thinks is a retreat lot, to make sure that the abutters and the land council and the board are on the same plan, that is something that's permittable, even though the permit is going to expire before that would happen.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Okay. Anyone else on the board have any comments, questions? Leslie, anything you got on your end?
No, we recommend approval.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing if anyone would like to comment. And Mr. Welch, I'm going to activate you for this one.
Could I just, again,
Yeah, please.
similar to the 49, would be seeking the 1,500 square
Yep,
feet.
I got that.
It would be the same. It would be the same.
Yeah.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Discussion.
Hold on 1 second, and then
Oh, sorry.
Wait,
Just-
rescind that motion.
just the full foundation, the shed, essentially the same
Yeah.
program.
As
Okay.
Peacock. Yeah.
Yeah.
or as a 50.
All right, so let's do it again.
All right, that's my motion.
To close the public hearing.
Close the public hearing.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Motion
ayes
to
have it.
approve with the same conditions as 50. West my comment.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, who's sitting
Yes,
on
ma'am.
this?
Sorry.
Which alternate is sitting on this?
That would be Mr. Welch. Yep. Motion's made and second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Thank you.
Aye.
Yep, that brings us to 8070 Benjamin and Natalie Cowger on 15 Gregland Ave for the applicant. Yep, take your time, Mr. Santos.
What am I doing? I was going to take a break after this one. Take a break after this one before we get started on the rest of that. Yeah. It's a natural break point because I know how to.
I'm starting.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you.
Okay, Mr. Santos, you're up.
Okay. Thank you again. Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, with Rick Bodette representing the applicant, Ben and Natalie Cowger. Ben is in attendance tonight. This is an AR, approval required subdivision request for, and Holly, if we could bring up the, for a property located at 15 Gregland Avenue. And we can start with that plan right there, I believe. So this is a approval required subdivision request for a rectangular piece of property located on Gregland Avenue, which is a private 50-foot wide roadway that many of you are familiar with, as there is recent development going on, obviously, through the Richmond Group and some other homeowners in the particular area. This subdivision is, the lot itself is approximately a half-acre parcel of land. It currently is a single-family dwelling. It is located in the R10 residential zone. And what we are proposing is 2 buildable lots with a 20-foot wide modified right-of-way, if you will. 10,000 square foot lot along the back, meeting R factor and frontage. 10,000 plus square foot lot at Gregland Avenue, again meeting R factor and frontage. These current properties are being developed here, and then we have a Glowacki property located along this area here. The area is not located in a special flood hazard area. There does not contain any wetland resource areas on the site. If we go to the second plan, Holly, the site development plan, there is a small area of mapped, believe it or not, of mapped NHESP MESA area along the back side of the property in this particular area here. So those are the only particular resource areas. The site is serviced by public sewer and also public water. Although the existing dwelling currently has a septic system on it, that will be abandoned, and the system will be connected, the house will be connected to the public sewer. This existing house does have a water connection, and it also has, there is an existing well that was on the site previously. That's still an active well along the backside here. Proposal would be to either use that well for any proposed new dwelling, or potentially connect the rear dwelling to Gregland Ave and the public water. This dwelling would be connected via a sewer connection, public sewer, to the sewer line located in Gregland Avenue. The proposal itself is fairly simple. I mean, there is an existing single-family dwelling on the lot. The lot, as it exists today, could have had a permitted second dwelling. It just has that's never been done in this particular case. What we're proposing, again, modified roadway, creation of the 2 lots, seeking frontage and access off of that modified roadway. Just as kind of a point of interest here, this is the Glowacki property located to the south. I'm currently working, that's Greg Glowacki's property. I'm currently working on that property also for a similar situation. So at the end of the day here, what we'll have is basically, we have 20 foot here, would have a 20-foot section on this side that would look like your standard 40-foot wide, a 40-foot wide way with a turnaround in this particular area here. In light of that, what we're asking to do here is to utilize the existing driveway that services the existing dwelling for access to the rear lot here. And then at such time as I come in with the Glowacki proposal here for that development, we would look at potentially utilizing the Glowacki driveway here as our roadway with a modified turnaround in this particular area here. Rather than trying to do two separate roadways going to the back, at the end of the day, it's going to look exactly like it does now. Glowacki has a dwelling in the front, has an approved secondary dwelling. We'll have this dwelling and this dwelling here, and it will look no different than it does today, with the exception of we'll have 4 marketable lots here, or 4 lots as opposed to a primary and a second dwelling on one lot. Again, the Glowacki property is serviced by private on-site septic. It's a mandatory connection now. Board of Health has already sent out letters to everyone in the area that it's a mandatory connection to the sewer system. So that's what the proposal is. It's an AR subdivision with our standard list of lengthy waivers for this particular type of development. I will say the one thing that's a little bit different here than what we've seen in some of them is we do have the ability, again, when we look at this, essentially this is going to look like a standard subdivision. It's going to be a 40-foot right-of-way with a bulb here. It's just that what we'll try to do is incorporate these two properties to come together at the same time. Under this proposal, again, temporary easement utilizing the driveway and subdividing it in that particular manner right now. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have with regard to the application.
Sure. Board members, anything you have? Leslie, Holly, anything that you need to do?
No.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this. Seeing
Motion
no
to close the
comment.
public hearing?
And do I hear a second? Discussion.
There's no alternate on these?
No, because this is not a
It's a
special
subdivision.
permit. No, this is a definitive, this is a subdivision. So, motion is made and seconded to close the public hearing, correct?
Yep.
All right.
Oh.
What, did you? Go ahead. We
As-
can rescind that for a second and come back to it.
So aside from the typical conditions that the board would include about working with the neighbor on the mirrored
Yep.
right-of-way, do you want to include, I think you do, a condition about the driveway being abandoned once the road
Once the
can
second,
be brought in?
yeah,
Okay.
once the second application comes online.
And if they're seeking 2 dwellings on each lot or not? I mean, we didn't talk about a contribution to the
Rick.
bike path.
I'm sorry.
And that's typically $2,000 per dwelling unit.
What bike path?
Were you
That's all
thinking
being
about
done by
second dwelling,
Richmond
Paul?
anyway.
Just out of curiosity.
Yes. Well, I'd like to not.
Yeah.
You want to
Yes.
leave it on the table?
We want to leave it on the table, yes.
So did you catch what Leslie said about the bike path? I think that's-
No, I'm sorry.
All right, so Leslie, would you repeat yourself, please?
So typically when these types of subdivision waivers are granted, there's some contribution to an area bike path or pedestrian improvement. And that's typically $2,000 per dwelling unit.
Hold on a second. I typically would go for that, except that this whole area is being totally remastered. And I think that's ridiculous in this particular case. So I'm of a mind to waive it for this particular small subdivision that really, when there's so much other stuff going on in there, I think that's crazy. I don't know how you guys feel.
But it's not for that area.
Well, what area is it? They're
Well-
already getting everybody else to do the bike paths as they
Yeah.
develop all the way down the road, and that's already happening in front of the liner buildings. And this is inside a private development, basically, not on public road, and the bike path is already running the whole length of the other side of Old South Road. So I think it's kind of ridiculous to require this young guy to give us $4,000. In this particular case, given where it's located and given what's going on already by other people.
Well, let's be,
Rick's standing up.
that's okay, but let's be clear here. It'd be actually with 2 dwellings per lot. It'd be 8,000.
Yeah, I think that's crazy.
Only if they trigger it. Only if they trigger it. And I kind of have an alternate viewpoint to that. I hear what you're saying to me, but on the other side of the coin, there's a lot of work that is going to have to be done in this area to place all that work onto one developer who's going to be doing things, I think is a little unfair.
But what bike path? That's not already being paid for by Richmond.
But there's also other public improvements that can take place in that area. And I would like to have it, I'd like to have it as a buffer sitting in there, personally. I think it's, again, we're not talking, if he wants to limit it to one, if he wants to limit it to one dwelling apiece, that's one thing. I think he wants to exercise his ability to max the lots, which I can appreciate. And again, I'd like to have that as an ability for this board. That's my personal take.
It's excessive. It's excessive.
Yeah, of course you can.
Oh, God. Okay. Andrew, we had this discussion the last meeting with the little thing on on fairgrounds, and then we just approved the last Form J for Waverly Place, or whatever it's called, right?
Mm-hmm.
Weatherly, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a common thing, because they can't A&R. They don't have enough frontage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But it's not it. It's totally legal, totally within the subdivision control law to do this. I think Andrew wants to have a conversation about a way to, improve this situation. This is going to come up a lot, especially in. This isn't high end. This is just houses for people that live in Nantucket. That's what we're doing. But it's not your standard A&R, okay? And they are getting a lot of waivers to put in a frontage road, essentially a frontage driveway that looks like Nantucket. It looks like it does now, except they're getting frontage. They're getting a benefit. There's no question about that. So we can't just say that this is nothing. It isn't nothing. But I don't want to take this little diddly thing and turn it into a gigantic conversation, because Joe has talked about this 1,000 times. He's not here right now. But this is his thing, this $2,000 a house thing. He's the one that really pushed this. And I don't disagree with it in a lot of cases. I'm not saying I completely agree with what Linda's saying, but I'm stuck on this one, because this is going to continue. Leslie, you got Andrew's not here. You got to say something, because this is something that's son of a catch-22. This isn't going to be the last one of these.
And
there's going to be a lot of these little frontage roads. That's what we're talking. It's a frontage driveway. That's what
on a
what
private
it is,
road.
Okay, on a private road that may be public someday. So don't go too far there either. This is why this is not a simple. If we don't require something here, there's another one, then there's another one, then there's another one, and then we're like, what are we doing? No, there's going to be more of these. I'm talking about everywhere. I'm not talking about just here. Okay, we just did one. We just did one.
I know, but I'm just talking about here.
It's going to continue. So.
But there's one other thing we got to point out here. The guys across the street are all commercial. We got some humongo buildings across the street, all the way down to where Shepley used to be. And I don't remember charging those guys $2,000 for their 6,000 square foot storage building, or any of the other commercial stuff that went on directly across the street from this. I think that's unfair to make this young kid who's subdividing his lot with a tiny little road, which is what we've been doing a lot of, as Nat said lately, and in this particular case, not on a public road, already have bike paths being taken care of, to charge him $4,000 a lot is ridiculous to me. When those guys across the street who have much heavier use of their properties, Aloisi, all the guys across the street, starting down at Parcel Plus and running down all the way to Shepley, where they used to be, Glowacki's building, they paid nothing. I'm having a big problem only in this location, forcing that issue on this kid.
All right, let's direct the comments to the chair, please, not back and forth to each other. Mr. Trudell.
Well, I was going to say that they may be across the street with larger commercial buildings, but they're still single lots. They're not looking for the benefit of a subdivision to, at one point, maybe sell them.
They got all MCDs.
All right, through the chair, please.
All MCDs.
Will you respectfully let him finish his comments?
That was my comment, and I'm okay with the charge, 2,000, should they put another dwelling on
Okay.
What does that mean?
I don't think we can do that.
No.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
It has to happen now or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Miss.
Then I'm okay charging.
All right. Mr. Bodett.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out that this is as Linda mentioned, and I don't think I quite agree completely with Linda. I'm more in line with Nat, I think. I mean, I understand what Barry you're saying about these add up, and but, it might not be for a bike path, 10 feet from this one. It might be for another bike path used for Nantucket. I do, however, agree with Linda to a certain extent that I think it is excessive for such a small subdivision. I mean, we don't have the benefit of a 12-lot subdivision here that a developer's putting in, where we might negotiate. Certain smaller lots might not have second dwellings. Bigger lots might have second dwellings, and we can pick and choose. And we know we're going to get whacked a little more for a second dwelling lot, and we can upcharge a customer that we're selling a lot to for that. I mean, I think for these small subdivisions, it's my personal belief, and I think it would work for this client potentially. That $2,000 a lot maybe for the smaller ones might be more appropriate, but I do think it's a bit excessive for a small subdivision of just a local family, which is what I think these are kind of designed for here. So,
thank you.
Did we close the public hearing?
No, public hearing didn't close because I had you actually retract that because Leslie needed to bring something up. So we're still in public hearing phase.
I mean, I'm more, I guess, my conversation was more about a policy issue than it is this application.
Just stay with us.
This approval. You know what I'm saying? I was just touching on it because it's popular. It's happening more. This isn't on the cliff. This isn't, the little one we did up there. That was the first good 20-foot right of way. I do like them though because it looks like it was going to look if it was an A&R. It's going to look the same. It's not changing anything. We're not building roads for one house, making them spend $150,000 for drainage and craziness, that you don't need. But it's a topic that we need to talk about. I'm in favor of, actually, like what Rick said, if that makes sense, half of what we would normally do, but on the other hand, we talked about this in other ones. We have somewhat of a policy for this area. I don't know if it's a policy that we are doing every one, but we have done it. So I don't know. What did we do at 46? I'm not 46. 82 and 84.
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but the board has consistently required some kind of contribution when significant roadway waivers are being requested to go towards pedestrian improvements in the area. And you can certainly vote to not require that, but just because it's a small subdivision doesn't mean it's not adding people and taxing the improvements in the area. And Richmond isn't expected to pay for everything in this area. There's lots of public improvements that will happen.
Then my motion would be to make it $2,000 per lot, period. Leave it at that.
All right, there's a motion on the.
Well,
there's a motion.
Do we have to close the public hearing first? Go back to that again?
No, you know what? Because this kind of affects the outcome on things a little bit. So I think we can still keep the public hearing open since this is just a segment of the entire subdivision. I will respectfully take your motion. Because it's independent of everything else and certainly sets.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to charge $2,000 per lot.
All right. Do I hear a second to that? All right. Discussion on that particular issue. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Record reflect I am opposed to it.
Does that carry?
Yeah, carries.
You need a simple majority.
I think it was a good
Yeah, no,
Okay.
all this has to be is simply unanimous. Okay. All it has to be is simply unanimous. Okay.
Then I will make a motion to close the public hearing now, right?
Is there anyone in the public who does want to comment on it? Not hearing anything. Go ahead. No.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Discussion on the issue. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously.
Motion to approve with the standard. Is this being paved? What is this being?
No.
I didn't think so. Stabilized, whatever?
Yep.
Okay.
All All right, so the motion's been made and seconded at this point. Discussion on the issue. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Leslie, will you do me a favor?
Yes.
I think, as Nat said, there's going to be more of these. So can we also put something onto our agenda to have a little policy discussion?
Yes.
Maybe in the next month or two, because I'd like this board to try to be consistent from here on in.
Okay.
I think we
About
need to take
what
them one by
It-
specific issues per lot, though, Barry.
I still think staff, from what I'm kind of picking up, I think staff has kind of recognized that there's going to be more of these. They have an opinion as well, too. I'd like everyone to weigh in on it on this board and maybe try to develop, again, in the end, you can decide that you don't want to do it.
And
Yes, ma'am.
And we have a zoning bylaw amendment idea, not for this town meeting, I don't think, but going forward to sort of change the way these are dealt with a little bit, because we do recognize that there will be more infill, is encouraged
Right.
in the master plan, and a lot of these roads are being created really unnecessarily. They're just being created for frontage, and that's, putting more essentially paper streets on paper and taking land off the tax rolls when we could do it another way. So we'll put that on for discussion as well.
Yeah, I think.
brought that up.
Oh, well,
And I'm
when you
glad-
get to 4181Ls, they don't even have to have frontage, they just have to have access.
Right.
So there's a lot of
Let's-
things out
all right.
there that don't even require that.
Let's not have the discussion now, but we will have the discussion in the next month or two, depending upon, where staff sees fit to try to insert it, so that we can formulate all of our thoughts here together at this point, including what staff has maybe got in development. Okay.
Barry, could I just, to Leslie's comment, I've actually pulled together some regulations for basically what's considered a rear lot. It's a rear lot regulation in which these could be done under an approval not required process,
Yep.
in which you have a rear lot regulation which allows this without going through this process. And I've pulled some regulations from different communities
Great.
that have rear lot, and I'll be happy to share them
And
with
here you go. This is more the reason why I want to have this kind of as a separate discussion for this board to get some time to pull some of that information together.
Cool.
Thank you, Paul. That's really good. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess at this point, and it will be controlled. So, all right.
What pretty pictures do you have for us? This is their color-coded cover page. Thank you.
I know. Well, that's crazy. Now you're around a lot. That one doesn't. What's that?
I was afraid
freezing, but no hair.
I got to work one side of this stuff. Yeah. They're saving money. They're trying to save money.
I know, really.
Yeah.
Oh, bad.
No, that was fun. Yeah, that was fun. Are we really doing this tonight?
We are really doing this.
I just, it seems like it's been so long.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
I know,
I-
and that's why I really want to make sure that happens.
Well, I'm going to start out by asking you guys for a date for a special meeting before your next planning board meeting.
Okay.
We had been thinking that
Okay. I'm glad you're bringing that up to me now, because that way I can grab the calendar and see what the hell is going on.
And so when we start, we're going to say we're going to open the public hearings, but we're going to ask you to continue such a date certain.
Sure.
And if you guys can come up with that date certain sometime
Yeah.
before the next planning board meeting, I think we'll be ready to go.
Okay.
We love the 23rd if you have any.
What is the
It's a Monday. No.
Can't do it.
What's a good day for you? If there's a Thursday?
Thursdays generally, yeah.
Thursday night?
But let me look. Because,
Because he was away, we would have been ready to go.
yeah, no, I understand. I understand. Well, I mean, he can always,
He's already done it.
oh, yes. So some of this stuff has been on the table already. Okay. This is where I'm getting confused about what we have and what we haven't been dealing with. These. Big. I thought that one was out South Dakota. Yeah, it's very cool. I like it. The design is Black Hills design. Yeah, with the leaves in them, one of copper, one of like little gold. Yeah, it is really nice. Thank you.
I'm holding on to my phone. My high school daughter is reading Infinite One at home by herself.
Oh, there we go.
For school. So she said.
I don't think I ever read that one.
What?
Yes.
What date?
Either the 19th or the 26th.
You know what? I'm having such a problem with my calendar so often lately. It's driving me absolutely absurd. Outlook should be outbound at this point. I'm blind right now in terms of the date. I'd probably say Thursdays usually have a higher probability than Mondays. That I can say. I hate to be doing this on a wing and a prayer right now with you, but I just think, I know, I just don't have access to it.
Okay.
I really don't. Like I said, so I'm kind of guesstimating that would
Maybe
be.
the 26th and 7th, because we're working on Tuesdays.
The 26th has got like a higher probability still. Yeah.
We have a zoning meeting.
Oh, that's right. Shoot, we have.
We have
That's
a
right. We do
zoning
have zoning.
article meeting.
He's absolutely right.
I didn't mean to.
No,
see that on our
no, thank you. That's gonna, that's got, that's massive. That's gonna massive. Extract the 19. Yeah, please pray that I've got that. I'm sorry. I feel bad.
You're making it hard.
I wish if I had known sooner, I would have looked. All right, thanks. Yeah. Okay. So that's it.
I'll bring it up.
Yeah.
Does any time work for you, like 4 o'clock?
If I've got the day free, I'll put it this way. Yeah, yeah. Would pushing it in? All right. Somewhere in that time range would be good.
But if it's always something.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, you saw it on Facebook?
Come in and get out.
Oh, they're on Facebook. Do I need it? I've actually got one for them. which will be a very bold experiment at this point. Neither did I. I'm going to find out shortly, though. Yeah. Goats eat Christmas trees, I'm told.
Oh, yeah.
Which I find really kind of weird with the pine needles and stuff, but also need to make sure there's nothing on it. It's going to have to be stripped down.
What is the process with
Can we
Which
put
it
the
may-
heat on in here?
the larger
When he starts
version?
moaning, it's too cold. I know it's cold.
Interaction timeline.
So,
This compared to
No,
the
it's still
orange
like
sheet,
cold
so they're
air
coming
coming
in,
on
they're
there.
going to present some photos, get some feedback, they bring it back, we get some feedback, or
This?
yeah. How do you see this unfold?
Well, it's already been going on for so long.
I know, but has it actually been reviewed?
Oh, yeah. Up until now, it has numerous times.
John? I think she tried already.
I know, usually it just goes down.
Oh, I know, really special.
Sweatshirt and a hoodie.
You can
Well,
put your
you
jacket
turn the
on.
heat on and
I know, I
cold
can
coming out.
I can feel it now.
Just having I went to, but I went to the meeting.
Yeah.
Keep you,
My hands,
my fingers.
everything.
I know.
Well, I haven't heard him lock us in the room yet.
No, you haven't heard that.
Usually I hear that by now.
What's that?
Just as a point of information, at this point with this particular project, not
Yep.
the subdivision portion, but special permits, where are you guys, have you reviewed any concerns about parking, sidewalks, crosswalks?
We've had very loose
Depending on the
But so
project.
that's all fair game in terms of just general
Yeah.
discussion.
Depending on the
Yeah.
project.
I didn't want to bring
That's
it
why
up.
we waived it all. We waived it all for this little guy. No crosswalks, none of that.
No, he's talking about Full Richmond.
Yeah, for the one
Oh,
that,
this one.
just so I know what we're
That's this
discussing.
Yeah.
Everything.
Is, okay, so I wasn't sure what was on the table.
The whole damn thing.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
haven't gone anywhere.
That's why the other thing I think I mentioned to you as well too is we checked in to see what before you.
I did.
Okay,
Actually,
good. All right,
Leslie
so-
was kind of.
The
now
liner
you know.
buildings,
Okay, so
liner
now-
buildings are the only things we've approved.
Yeah.
Leslie, that was-
Okay, cool, thank you.
Perfect. Because a lot of these we've only like loosely conceptually discussed, but it hasn't really gotten down into.
Yeah, she was
I
running
don't
up
want
to
to do
speed
this,
from
Leslie.
really
I
the
want to have
beginning
a
to
special
now.
meeting for
Okay.
this. I don't want to do this.
But I wasn't sure, just,
I
you're
want
running.
to have a special meeting.
Yeah, no, just right now,
Okay.
Yeah, it really is, just like I said, so there's just, because we've kind of had a look at the whole thing holistically, and now we're collapsing it back down to get into the respective pieces they wanted.
Because I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Did Leslie cover some of that with you then?
She did.
Okay,
And then we left it to details. That's what I wanted to do.
all right, okay.
Is that cold outside?
Less body heat, less souls in here at this point.
Ridiculous. All right, Barry, let's go.
Yeah. All right, so,
You're right. I think that's what I remember.
we all
back
set,
from
Catherine?
Selectmen days, too.
We good? All right, so, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to reconvene at this point.
Yep.
All right. So, next thing before us is going to be 7988, and this is going to start opening up the Richmond Great Point development process. But we're at a stage now where we really need to kind of look at each one of these individually as we do it. So I'm just going to call them individually, if you don't mind, and we'll do that. So 7988, which is Richmond Great Point, Nancy Ann Lane, Greg Lynn, Dafkin, and Old South Road. So, Mr. Arminetti, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, staff, neighbors. Dave Arminetti, Director of Development for Richmond Great Point Development and the Richmond Company. With me tonight, my colleague, Patty Raghaveen. I guess at your suggestion and discretion, Mr. Chairman, would maybe point of order, if you could, on these items.
Yep.
We would like to suggest that we open the 4 subdivision hearings, try and get some consensus and direction from the board on a couple of items that relate specifically to the subdivisions, most specifically related to the road network system and the road profile.
Yep.
That would help us move forward, hopefully, with the staff in refining that. And then not open and have any discussion on the special permit applications and just continue those to the next date certain. Given that we have a full board requirement or preference for the special permit matters, and out of deference to try and have all the permanent members here, given that everyone's invested so much time in this project over the years at this point.
All right, so that's why all right, so I'm just going to let you kind of work with me to guide through the
Sure.
process, I
Be
think
glad
is
to do
what
that.
I'm hearing you say at
And
this
then I
point.
guess just another scheduling point of order maybe that we
Yes, sir.
address before we get into the substance, so we don't lose the schedule in advance of the substance.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to move along, obviously, and there's been a couple of different reasons why we haven't gotten. So we want to request that the board, when we decide for a date certain, that we actually name a date tonight, so that we can get our, consultants organized and things of that nature. So obviously, that would be very helpful for us, because we're feeling strongly that, given our relationship with the staff and our conversations before this board, we're getting very close, and we would like to make sure that we are ready to go with all the items once we do have that full board, and maybe sometime before the end of this month, before your next meeting, I should say.
Okay. Sounds good. Do you have a thought, or?
We're very flexible. We'll make our changes. I mean, I think that your schedule would probably suggest it's a Thursday, if I can be presumptive. And
Yep.
We're looking at the fact that you have a big meeting on the 26th, so maybe the 19th.
19th should be a Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah.
February
Do you guys
19th.
want to try to start early or something?
Earlier.
Like 4?
Mm.
What do you think?
Whatever works.
All right, so
19th works.
let's tee up the 19th for 4 p.m.
Thank you so much, very much.
Yeah, no problem.
So how much of it's going
Thank
to-
you, Mr. Chairman and
We're-
members. So if
I'm
we
gonna let
could,
Dave kind of just answered Linda's question. I'm going
Oh,
to let
sure.
Dave kind of walk us through where we're going to hold back and where he's going to get us to move a little forward at this point.
Sure.
So
Through you,
please.
Mr. Chairman. So what we'd like to do, as I said, is simply continue the 3 special permit hearings to that date certain, hopefully January 19th, which would be application 40-16, 53-16, and 54-16. So those are the 3 special permits that are before the board.
Yep.
40-16, 53-16, and 54-16.
So when we come to him, we'll just bang that right through. Okay.
We'd like to open the 4 subdivision application hearings, that being 7988, the first one on your agenda chronologically, 8013, 8024, and 8025. The discussion we think we'd like to have really overlaps between all 4 of them, so there's no distinction really necessarily between the 4.
All right, so if that would work well for you, then you want to open all 4 simultaneously, I think is what I'm hearing you say, correct?
I think that would be most efficient, Mr. Chairman, for both the board's time and our time.
Okay. All right, so, and then we'll come back to the other 3 afterwards and just tidy that up real quickly.
Great.
So besides 7988, we'll also be hearing 8013, which is Meadows 2, 8024, Sandpiper Place 1, and 8025, Sandpiper Place 2. There we go, it's official.
Great. Thank you. Good evening and Happy New Year, belatedly. So what we have before the board tonight is 3 exhibits, one of which you've seen that only has very minor revision since the last time we were before you, which is our overall color illustrated master plan. Really all we've done is add some notes that this is subject to current review of the planning board. We've added a little arrow here to show that Dave Kim Lane actually connects through to the existing roadway network, and there's not an intention to have a 90-degree intersection here. And we've adjusted some of the colors here that were kind of overlapping and smushing. Otherwise, this is the same that the board's seen the last couple of meetings. It's reflective of the overall development plan, including the Sandpiper Place 1 and 2 single-family development plan and the Meadows 2 apartment development plan. It also shows the retail liner buildings that the board approved several months ago. This does reflect the most recent discussion in lot configuration with the larger lots along Evergreen, fronting on Evergreen, and the larger lots along Mayflower and Daffodil fronting into the subdivision, and shows the potential with a separate lot as it's currently proposed in the Sandpiper 1 South subdivision. That would be a separate lot that we would offer in dedication to the town for the potential neighborhood connection, and that would be the only neighborhood connection along this entirety of the Sandpiper development that we would offer and that the board has provided direction on. So this really hasn't changed. We just wanted to refresh everybody's memory as to where we kind of left off and where we stand today. The other two exhibits relate to the street network configuration that we're contemplating and have discussed in some level of detail with the staff, including most recently an additional technical review meeting we had with the staff team and Mr. Pesci about 2.5 weeks ago, where we specifically discussed dimensions and cross sections. So, and also the potential jurisdiction of the roadway system and how that might layer in as time goes by. That we've had some substantial discussions on with the staff, particularly with Ms. Snell and Mr. Vorse. So actually, Holly, if you wouldn't mind, maybe put up the street network graphic first that shows the overall development, how it relates to the existing network. Thank you. So this is a fairly simple graphic just to demonstrate what we're proposing in concept in terms of which streets we intend to dedicate for public dedication to the town at their discretion, which streets we think are more appropriate to remain private, which streets are currently public, which streets are currently private that we're going to propose to dedicate. So there's a 4-color scheme here that's identified on the legend. The first one, the lime green, if you will, are the existing major public roads that run by the vicinity of the site, that being Lover's Lane all the way to the west and Old South Road all the way to the north. Obviously, those are existing public roads. We wouldn't contemplate any change to those. They would continue to be public roads. We will just tie our roadway system into that, either being private or public at the discretion of your board, and then eventually town meeting and the Board of Selectmen acting as the county commissioners. So the second layering, if you will, or characteristics or category is the existing private roads, which everyone is familiar with driving and experiencing. Nancy Ann Lane that runs basically now from the Parcel Plus store all the way back to the Coca-Cola warehouse, past the asphalt plant, gravel pit. Dave Kim Lane, which runs east to west along the back of our portfolio, in front of the Coca-Cola warehouse, Cape Cod Express, and a couple of the development parcels that we still own. And then Gregland Avenue, which runs north to south, past some of the residential properties that the board was just talking about here on Gregland, the commercial development in the C-Tech zoning here on the east side of Gregland. And this road, as the board knows, currently extends out, even though it's not a road on a plan, and extends all the way to Old South Road. That would be abandoned and terminated in exchange for this major project entrance road that would be substituted for this connection. So the red or the magenta we're proposing are existing private streets that were part of the original 16514Z subdivision, have been private for some 30 plus years. We would propose to offer to dedicate those to the town to become public roads in connection with this entire development, again at the discretion of the town. The orange are the new roads or roadway segments that we would be constructing as part of the subdivision, primarily the housing subdivisions, Sandpiper and Meadows. That would be the roads connecting the apartment complex to the single-family complex, and the apartment complex and single-family complex to the southeastern portion of the portfolio, and then the northern and northeastern portion of the portfolio with a new project entrance road that would straighten out the current and a quirky S-curve along Gregland and Nancy Ann to a direct intersection at Old South. So all these orange roads, including all the major roads within the Sandpiper subdivision, we would propose to be dedicated for public roads at the town's discretion, and those would be the orange color. Lastly, the blue are the smaller kind of neighborhood connecting roads and common driveways and turnaround roads that just serve a couple of individual lots under the proposal. We don't see any need or benefit for those becoming public, so we would propose that those would retain private ownership and would be subject to maintenance and operation through the homeowners association. So that's kind of the hierarchy that we've envisioned, that we've talked about at some level of detail with the staff, which I'm sure Leslie can confirm or expound upon. And then we have a roadway profile section that we think is appropriate for all the major subdivision roads, which is a 40-foot wide right-of-way profile with a certain improvement. Thank you, Holly. that's what's shown here in this section or profile. So again, we have a total 40-foot right-of-way, which is your major subdivision road standard, 40 feet wide. We've talked about this in quite a bit of detail with the staff on a technical basis, and we think we see a need for a slightly wider travel lane than you might see in a normal smaller subdivision in the community. So 2 9-foot wide travel lanes, a 9-foot wide on-street parking lane that would be on one side and would be in limited areas. Obviously here we have 90 some odd lots, so we have to balance driveways with on-street parking, but we've talked about that quite a bit with the staff in terms of at least allowing for guest and overflow parking on one side of the street in certain areas. So we'd have a total paved width of roadway of 27 feet, a 1-foot Cape Cod berm on either side to get us to 29, a 4-foot landscaping strip on one side of the right-of-way, and a 6-foot wide multi-purpose path on one side of the right-of-way, being a combination bicycle pedestrian path as is shown in this graphic. And then there's a 1-foot strip on the non-landscaping strip side before you get to the actual property line. So this reflects a profile where you'd have a private lot or a home on either side, left and right. This is looking as if you were driving in the right-hand lane, this vehicle going away from the board, this vehicle obviously coming from the board, and this vehicle being a parked vehicle. So that gives you hopefully a better sense or picture of what the street would look like. And the materials being asphalt, Cape Cod berm asphalt. We are proposing or contemplating asphalt for the bike pedestrian path. If there's another material there that the board might want to consider or propose, we'd be open to discussion, but we see that as most appropriate given that it's going to be used quite a bit and that it is hopefully going to establish the character and permanency of the neighborhood that we're seeking. So if we could get some direction and consensus from the board on these items, I think we'd be able to move forward and continue to work in conjunction with the staff in terms of coming back to you with a draft decision and conditions, particularly as relates to the subdivision. And as we said, we would only like to seek discussion on the subdivision tonight and these roadway issues or any other subdivision-related issues that the board or the staff might want to bring up and not have any discussion on the special permit. So,
sure. So
with that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Sure. I'm just going to kind of go down each one of you at this point. So, Mr. Jeff.
I have no comment or no objection to what he's proposing.
Okay. Linda.
A couple of questions, Dave. If the rest of them have been here tonight and they see that arrow going off to Clay Street at this time, I think pandemonium's going to ensue.
Through you, Mr. Chairman,
At the moment, I think I would take the arrow off because you can't go through there until all those other things happen.
Sure. For the purpose of the graphic, the arrow is not intended to show a connection per se.
Explain that to them. That
might be a little challenging.
Let's not poke
we'll
the
be glad to take the arrows off the graphic. They were just meant to be illustrated. The principle being that as the board will hopefully recall from your decision on the Clay Street subdivision, the way that condition was contemplated and is currently in the draft that's undergoing staff and town council review is that connection and the means by which that connection can be made are merely being offered to the town for a fixed period of time, and there are a number of formal steps that would have to be taken to trigger that.
We know that. Take the arrow off there.
So we'd be glad to do that.
The other thing that's bothered me all along about this, living around the corner from Abrams Quarry and being on the Housing Authority board for years, the kids are all playing in the street. Field and Folger or Take Your Life in Your Own Hands. They're all in the street. They have no yard. The Housing Authority, they're all in the street. We had to put a basketball thing up in one of the cul-de-sacs. I don't have an area in the middle of the apartment buildings for the kids to run around and kick a ball or throw a frisbee or do whatever they're going to do. They're going to be all over the street again. They're going to be in the parking areas. They're going to be all over the street. That is reality. That's practical use. Because you can't say there aren't going to be kids all over the place in here. I know you've got a little green space that appears to be all the way over here, way away from the middle of the apartment buildings. that has been my biggest issue all along. You've solved the issues along Evergreen, Daffy, Mayflower. We've solved pretty much the Clay Street issue. I don't have a problem with the way the roads work at all. I think those are fine, so long as you can get out of this and down Dave Kim all the way to Lovers, and that's not blocked. But the lack of a field or open space in the middle, more towards that end, as opposed to the single-family dwellings, I'm not too worried about them. But I have a real problem with the lack of foresight on creating a space for the kids to get off the street. Because as I said, the other two subdivisions I'm involved with, kids are in the street. It's the only place they can play. You come down Blueberry around the corner from Nat's house and you make a right onto Folger. They're all in the street and you're going to hit somebody. Kids have almost been hit many times. Catherine can talk to it because she lives in there. And she knows the kids are all over the street. They have nowhere else to go. We're talking about a density here that is 10 times what Abrams Quarry is, because those are all single-family homes. And I forget how many people are going to be in these apartment buildings. What, 300, somewhere in 400 people?
Well, if I could, Mr. Chairman, there's 360 bedrooms right now, so
Right,
probably somewhere in the 400s,
bedroom.
plus or minus.
You know a percentage, just given demographics, a percentage of that is going to be kids. Where are they going? In the street. And I want to avoid that situation recurring like the plague. I don't know if that means you remove one building or you push them apart a little bit to get a little space here and there over there. But I think that's, for me, of the whole subdivision, I think it's fine, except for that one issue for me.
Sure, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I think the direction we're going in is quite possibly what you suggested at the end of your comments, Ms. Williams. The site plan, as it's currently contemplated, if you might, Holly, please, the illustrative site plan. Obviously, at this scale, you're talking about 800 or 900 feet between one tip of the apartment proposal area to the other. These buildings that we're showing are compliant with zoning. They comply with the workforce rental community provisions under 139 8D that was created that we're complying to. So, but this is only a conceptual site plan. These buildings are most likely going to evolve and change a little bit. You can see there's already some substantial open space and green space between some of these buildings. We just haven't figured out the exact detail yet of exactly what that's going to be used as. I think we've all talked about, and certainly the staff and Ms. Snell and Mr. Vorse have continued to reiterate the fact that there are going to have to be some more active areas in here. It's just, we're not quite there yet in terms of detail of design. So
Just know that when
your
you
comments noted, and
permit-
certainly something we've been thinking about. When we get to the next level of design here, particularly when we get to the HDC level, I think we'll be in a place to specify that and to be more specific. But in the context of a larger subdivision approval like this, I don't really think we can get to that level of detail yet.
Okay, just know that when this does get there,
Sure.
that's what I'm looking
I'll
for.
note it.
Nothing really else in here. But
No,
that's
no,
just
it's a really good point, and I think that I just want to basically reiterate that the whole concept has been driven by the concept, the model of campus. So that what we're looking for is a creation of maybe not one major field, but small quads of sorts, right?
Yeah.
That we can set aside and or plan for. And I think what we should do is be more explicit about that. And in that level, Linda, I think you're absolutely right. But what we're trying to do is not essentially put the parking, for instance, right in front of the front door, to have some paths to sort of really recreate what you see on a campus. And obviously on a campus you might see 10 people in one section, 10 people in another section, so it sort of makes its own way. But I think we can be more clear about that.
Okay, great.
Mr. Wall?
Oh, great. Fine. Good. No, I think Linda covered a good point. Maybe not quite as graphic as children play in the streets in Nantucket. I'm trying to get us past that point because I don't believe every child likes to use the street to play in.
Well, those two places do.
Let me finish my comment, please, because I've let you finish yours without interrupting. So anyways, but I kind of like where you're going. I understand on this level of detail right now, it's a little tough to see. I can't believe that every lot that you've defined in here at this point is strictly a house and nothing else. So I'm hearing you loud and clear saying you're going to try to be prudent about those things. Maybe not each lot has a fence in it as well, too. There are more common areas that I think you can develop in there to do that. And I think that's something the board has to be a little patient on as well, too. Give you a little bit of time to decide how that's all going to flow. So I like kind of what she's saying to you, and I also hear you loud and clear as well, too. That's still something that you're working on at this point. I think as we get toward the close of it, though, that's something we are going to need to look at.
Absolutely. I think we're on the same page, Mr. Chairman.
And I would agree. Let me turn to staff. I'm going to turn to my two peers here in a moment when I get to public hearing. Is there anything else, Leslie, you want to bring up?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so we did meet with Patty and Dave, and we've talked about a lot of these things as far as which roads may become public at some point, which ones would stay private. There's a couple of things that I do want to bring up. I think their sketch, their rendering of the on-street parking is great. This is larger scale. It definitely is going to need some on-street and overflow parking for the people living there and their guests. The one concern that we have, and I think they're looking into addressing this, the side of the street with the on-street parking may need a different type of curbing. Yeah, because if it's just the Cape Cod berm, people are going to pull up on it and they're going to be on the grass or whatever's over there. So that's one concern that we've brought up. Also, the pedestrian connection through to Daffodil, that needs to happen. Most likely, I think, at the end of where the Daffodil cul-de-sac is now, which I think that'll be reconfigured in the future.
Yeah.
I totally agree with Linda on the play areas. That's something that we've talked with Dave about from the very beginning, that this is a large-scale subdivision. It's likely to be family-oriented, and there's nowhere on this side of the island for children to go and play. There's not a playground. And the planning board required it in other subdivisions, like the Essex Road subdivision, which was much smaller in scale. That's a heavily used playground. And I think that, for something of this magnitude, one or more play areas need to be incorporated in the plan. And that's something that we haven't seen, but I think they are hearing that point.
Just if I could, Mr. Chairman, Leslie, if you just might clarify, the connection you're talking about, pedestrian and bicycle-wise, would be in this area?
Yes.
Through this area, through Daffodil?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Got it. All right. So. All right, so let me open the public hearing. Gentlemen, do you have anything that you want to?
I would just be
Yield to them a little bit first.
I would just be supportive of one or more playgrounds as well, possibly one or two in Meadows too, and possibly, I'm not sure where you could put one for Sandpiper or expand on the community area, but I think having a dedicated one or two or three playgrounds would be a really good idea. So I just would offer support for that. And otherwise, it's coming along. It looks pretty good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Procedurally, if we've got questions or concerns about stormwater management or things like that, that's something we're going to pick up at the special permit or here at the subdivision. Understanding Carl and I are speaking as members of the public in the public hearing.
Leslie.
That's part of the subdivision.
Okay. So as a member of the public, during the public hearing, I have some concerns that this is in the wellhead recharge, and all of the drainage is subterranean direct storage and infiltration through sand. There's no, I think it was Sachem's Path, they used the water gardens, which are above grade, and I know at Rugged Scott, excuse me, the 40B, they used the water gardens retention so that you had, organic materials filtering water. I did look at the study on the water, and I looked at our annual water our annual rainfall is about 41 inches. So if you imagine all the water that's being collected on the lots is being collected, it's 41 inches over however many acres it is. And I would just like to ask that there be some consideration for, organic filtered, like the water gardens. I just spoke with Leslie about this. There does seem to be various areas noting that there's no prohibition on actually stacking these above the infiltrator systems if the infiltrator drainage basins are at sufficient depth, so that you could have 2 in 1. But anyways, I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, thanks. Anyone in the audience wanting to say anything? No. Yeah, they're next. They're next.
I just
Go
wanted
ahead.
to address Mr. Welch.
Please.
Just to say that we heard that in the liner building proposal as well, and now we're incorporating both. So we've got a model already that we've started, at least in the commercial end of things, and we'll take that back to the table with respect to the residential as well.
Great. Thank you. Thanks. That's good. All right. So, not hearing anything else from the public, from staff, from the board at this point. The motion would be, do you want to continue to the 19th with this as well, or?
Sure, that would be great at your discretion, Mr. Chairman. If we could just continue them all to that meeting, I think we'll be in shape to come back with you, hopefully, with some draft decisions.
Everything left?
Let me just take these 4 first, since we've kind of
Sure.
opened public hearings behind them. Then I'm just going to
Motion to continue this to the 19th at 4 o'clock.
So that motion's made, and do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. All right. So, hang on just.
Motion to continue 4016
4016,
to-
5316, and 5416 are at the request of the applicant to be
Yep,
continued
to the 19th. That's my motion.
And do I hear a second? Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Great.
You want to continue 13 and 8013 and 8024 and
We already
8025
did.
also?
We did. I had, since we opened all 4 simultaneously, that's why I kind of kept
That was
them
my whole
separate.
motion then, okay.
That's
fine.
correct. That's, yep.
Okay.
We opened them all simultaneously,
Fine.
we all continued them. So.
See you next week.
Great. So, that's going to bring us to a sketch plan for Nautilus Real Estate Holdings, LLC, 63 Fairgrounds Road. Make no mistake, while I'm holding my hands up here like this, it's like a meat locker in here right now. So it's not that I don't want to listen to you
He
guys.
still has his scarf on, he knows.
So, I sometimes the body language gets people confused. Yeah.
You know you got to take that rock and give it to the family, or you got to leave the rock there, right?
The rock's there. Yeah. We don't have any plans to.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Bracken, are you going to kick
Good.
things off for them?
Sure, I'll go first. Don Bracken, Bracken Engineering. We were at the last meeting discussing this proposal. I'm going to put that up, Paulie. This is basically, it's a 40,000 square foot lot on Fairgrounds Road.
Wiggles coughing.
That's probably the best one to look at. So
No,
just
it's
to
Wiggles
refresh your
coughing.
memory, currently there is, the property consists of 2 lots. There's an A&R lot that's on record, approximately the shape that we're showing on this plan. The proposal, again, similar to Gregland Ave, almost looks identical, is to create roadway to create frontage in order to get a second lot.
This is Davis's, right?
Currently on the back lot is an existing single-family dwelling, which the owners hope to keep in its location and utilize. The way we prepared this plan was after looking at Weatherly Place and this recent plan for this meeting, we were asked to talk to the owners, see what they planned on doing with the property. So this plan we thought would demonstrate a typical use of the property. Again, for the subdivision, for the definitive plan, we're only talking these 2 lots. We're showing a duplex in the front and what would potentially be a garage studio or garage apartment on the back lot,
With the existing house staying.
and with the existing house staying. What the owners would like to do going forward with the definitive plan is to get feedback from the board, is so that these two lots would be available for whatever zoning allows, whether it be a duplex or a single family with a secondary dwelling on both lots. So without having to commit, because they really don't know exactly what they want to do. So I guess based on that, we'd like to discuss what the planning board would want as far as standards for the road. I also, in order to get a 16-foot wide paved road with shoulders similar to Weatherly Place, I increased the right-of-way to 25 feet from 20 feet that I showed previously. And it still doesn't affect the number of lots or the potential of what could be developed. So I think with that, if they don't have to pave it, I know this board typically in the past has asked for paving on some of these, and on others we haven't. Doesn't seem like we would necessarily have to pave it based on what the intended use would be and based on some other projects that were reviewed similar to this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Don, do you have enough parking if those become duplexes?
Yeah,
Like
oh yeah,
2
Holly
bedrooms
did point
apiece?
that out. We would need one space. If they are duplexes, we would need 4 more parking spaces.
Yeah.
But there is enough room to put a driving lane and spaces on each side. And there's flexibility to work with the layout of the building itself as well in order to make that fit.
As long as the parking was behind the structures. I
Yeah,
know the structures
yeah.
in that section of Fairgrounds, some are in front, some are in back.
Mhm.
They, all over the place.
Right.
But generally speaking, the parking's not all in your face
Mhm.
on the roadside. So I don't have an issue with this. As to whether it's paved, did we make Kara pave hers?
Weatherly Place is paved,
Yeah.
and you just modified a subdivision at 82 and 84 Surfside Road to allow pavement. And I think you all need to keep in mind that, there's primary dwelling, secondary dwelling, tertiary dwelling possibility here. So I think with that level of potential traffic, allowing the narrower road is fine, but it needs to be able to handle a lot of vehicles. So I would recommend paving.
Is that something you guys are considering?
It's definitely something we're considering. I think we were kind of trying to leave all options on the table. So if you mentioned there's secondary and tertiary dwellings, I didn't know if that would be something we would have to come back to get further approval for. And if we did at that time, maybe that would be the point at which we would need to pave it. Or
Generally, it's when you go for the subdivision.
Right.
Because then you don't have to come back for that issue, but you do have to come back for a secondary and tertiary permit anyway.
Sure.
Yep.
So there's no point in you laying out the road, stabilizing the road, and then having to pave it after everybody starts to build.
Yeah.
I would not suggest you do that. Personally, I don't have any problem with you leaving the parking areas unpaved. It would simply be the access road for me. 25 feet works for me.
On the layout.
You'd only have to pave 16 feet of it or whatever.
yeah, I think that's.
That's me.
Anyone else have any comments on this?
I agree with that. You have to look at how the stuff looks like.
Sure.
You can't have one next to one that's the same thing, but it's not the same in a case like this. So, yeah, what about drainage? Maybe like a swale instead of,
Yeah.
They haven't gotten that far yet.
It's
not that far yet.
No.
Well, we have thought about what we're going to do. I mean, it is a fairly level lot. It does drop from Fairgrounds about a foot and a half toward the back. So we would put probably at the very end a set of catch basins into a leaching system.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And also, there's already, I don't know if you can see by the plan, but there's an overhead electric line that runs to a pole right here that all falls within the layout. So one of the waivers, we are going to ask to keep everything overhead. So and we wouldn't have to, we could come off separately for whatever happens here to the street. Again, all utilities can come separately, just like this was in another A&R. We're going to, as I mentioned last time, we're going to utilize the existing curb cut, obviously, for this lot on this side, and take access off the proposed road for this lot.
Leslie, Holly, do you have anything?
Would you be willing to agree to all parking in the rear on those front 2 lots?
I think the one thing that we were potentially considering, just because we're not sure if we wanted to go duplex or what, I don't know if it's possible to have some sort of a, enclosed parking structure in the front that would be more of a garage that would look more like the rest of the houses, and then have...
You will never get a garage in front of those at the HDC.
Okay.
Ever. Plus, it would be huge.
Yeah.
It's not,
No, you're better off with open
Okay.
in the back.
and just vegetation.
A lot of traffic, you're going to want to put trees across your front.
Yeah.
Now may be a good time to bring up that bike path contribution.
They have a bike path there.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, for the record, even where there's already pedestrian infrastructure, I mean, that it needs to be maintained. The money can be used for additional fencing or landscaping or lighting or the installation of water fountains.
Can you let
It's not just
Can you let her finish? It's
the
really rude when you
initial.
interrupt.
Yeah, it's not just the initial construction. There are ongoing maintenance and improvements that can happen. And if you guys want to move away from requiring it, then we just need to know. But, I'm just bringing it up again on this one.
Yeah.
So I guess to be prepared, if one of the lots was the approval not required, so we're creating 2, what would we sort of be expecting as far as that contribution?
What the board's required in the past is $2,000 per dwelling unit.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
And that was the same condition being put on the previous one?
Well,
That one got modified a bit to where it became 2,000 per lot.
So is that
But-
existing lots?
You already have a house back there.
There's already one, you know what I mean?
I think, here you go again. This is all right. So this is one of the reasons why I've asked staff to put this on as an agenda item.
Sure.
All right, because my board really is all over the place at the moment. We all have different opinions. Staff has got an opinion as well too. I think at this phase, since you're just doing a sketch plan right now, I think you're hearing what we're kind of leaning toward, but that may change when you finally move from sketch into definitive. So just be aware that that's kind of a moving target right now.
I just asked Leslie, we have and have not charged for existing structures, and you have an existing structure back there.
Which has been there for 40 plus
Right.
years.
Me personally would never charge you for an existing structure.
But here you go again. This is at a sketch plan phase.
So just
Let's-
put that in your budget.
Sure.
What's coming up.
Will do.
It's something the board, like I said, this isn't done yet. This is something the board may require, and you certainly have heard individual members react to it. Okay, but we need as a board to be a little clearer about where we're going to go. And I think Leslie has said it may boost itself up to a warrant article, depending upon how this all develops.
Is there some kind of equation or formula we can use similar to like a bedroom where it's 0.75 per, and then with a minimum of something, and then thereafter? So when you get into a development of 2 houses or 5 houses or 10 houses, there's a certain equation that we can formulate, and we don't even have to take it on.
So
Well, I'm not saying bedroom. I'm using it as an example for lots.
Can I just ask you a question? Are you talking about the bike path thing?
No. Yes. Exactly.
All right. Can we hold that discussion? You've all got great thoughts. We've all got great thoughts. Right. We've all got some great thoughts. This is why I'm just going to say it again. This is why, so that we're all kind of on a uniform page as we march into the future. This will be a topic for discussion for the board. I appreciate it.
Is this subdivision pretty cool?
Right, and I think Leslie brought up a valid point, just to make them aware that may be a possibility. Okay, that's all. All right, can we stop? Yeah, but let's stop the discussion. Because you're already starting, you want to have the discussion tonight? And no, because it's not even on our agenda.
They're gonna have to put aside 8 and
Right. And that may change to a lower number or a different number. Just in due fairness to them, it's worth just bringing up. Leslie, is there anything else you have from a staff perspective?
No.
Okay. Board members, do you have anything else for them?
No.
Mr. Bracken, do you feel as though you've gotten a
We have what
sense?
we need to take the next
There
step.
you go.
Thank you.
That's what I need to hear. No, on a sketch plan, no. You don't have to vote anything at this point. You just, all they're looking for is some guidance from the board about where we're trying to go.
Right. Thank you very
All right,
much.
guys. You good? Thanks. I appreciate it. All right. Yep, a few more things. So, just quickly, I want to have a discussion about a policy on our agenda at this point. Just to talk about doing, you all got an email from me. I don't know if there was any feedback, Leslie, and I kind of need to turn to you since Andrew's not here, because I had that.
I didn't receive any
All right.
feedback from anyone.
Right, because the thought has been to move to a consent agenda and I think pretty much I've given you the layout of how that's going to work. Well, what it will mean, and Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, that we're going to have to accelerate a few of our time frames okay.
I don't want to change the deadlines for the public. I don't. And I don't
Okay.
see how we're having much trouble with it. All I said tonight is that I had a problem with the first one, we went right on with the rest. So I don't see why we have to change any deadlines at all for any reason. And I think that's just a nightmare.
Well, this would be too, so it's not a surprise at the last minute to find out I need to recuse myself from that. I think it would be good for the board to know that in advance.
Well, I think we all have to have a responsibility to look at the agenda and say, look, I got a problem with it. That doesn't mean she's going to change the order on the agenda at all, because the agenda is already posted, and I don't think we should be running around here changing deadlines because we can't respond. I think that's ill-advised, and I think the public knows what the deadlines are. Catherine's comfortable with the deadline. If back them up too far, it's never going to work. But they're pushing now in order to get the staff approvals. As Holly knows painfully and Catherine knows painfully, they're pushing now to get the staff approvals, the staff recommendations and all that stuff. They can't back up any further and get closer to the meeting we just had. Especially when we're in a town meeting.
Respectfully, I think, well, let me start. Do you guys have any feedback? I'll hold back for a second. What's that?
No, I'm still gathering. I'm listening.
Okay.
Barry, can us too or no?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes.
I guess my only concern, and I don't know if it falls into this, is that it just seems like we're getting submissions from applicants at the very last minute. I mean, literally received our packets. And it's, two very large packets. It just seems to me that to the extent that this is relevant, we need to correct that, because I know I'm new at this and, this with this group, and this is a new procedure, but I think we all should have the opportunity to review our packets in full before we come to the meeting, and not do it in the last 24 hours. And I'm not putting this on staff. I'm saying, with respect to deadlines and those deadlines being observed, it seems to me that there's something not happening there if we're getting submissions that just like hard copies that came in today or yesterday. Mm-hmm. So I just want to put that out there for consideration in the discussion. But it doesn't speak directly to the topic you brought up, but it is a concern of mine.
I think that out of this, and you go back, I think way before everyone else was here, I was here a little bit. We used to have 2 meetings a month.
Mm-hmm.
When we stopped at it in 2009.
Somewhere in that.
Earlier than that.
Was it earlier?
Yeah.
It makes it so that when the public has, yes, they have to wait a whole nother month. So it's better to make it easier for them. Yes, it sounds like it's last minute, but some of the stuff is not, complicated. It's not like you're going to get a big project last minute. It's usually something small, like an A&R, second drawing, or whatever, stuff that we're talking about. It's a consent list.
Mm-hmm.
By only having a meeting once a month, which is all we really need for the most part, that's why we changed You see what I'm saying? So their burden is one meeting a month. So they're going to, oh, I'm going to hurry up because it's another month. We don't have special meetings, Steve. I mean, occasionally we do, and some small stuff comes in, but for the most part, we don't have 2 meetings a month often. You know what I'm saying? Unless it's something like the Richmond thing or some other specific reason that it may come up once a year. So that's my thing, is that when we had 2 meetings a month, somebody could say, well, I'll just wait for the next meeting, but it isn't that long. Now we don't do it. That's I just always had an issue with that. We need to make sure that we give the public a chance because it's once a month. That's just my personal thing, thinking on both sides of the fence. Sometimes you guys have comments, Holly and Catherine, too, about some of this stuff. So.
Do you?
I don't know. That's it for me. I mean, on this one thing.
Yeah. So, Barry, if the board wants to get their packet a week ahead of time, then we'll need to move basically all the deadlines for non-public hearing stuff back a week to give everybody time to scan and do things. So to Nat's point, the board, when you met twice a month, did have kind of a harder deadline. Like if it doesn't come in, it doesn't get on the agenda, we're not going to consider it. But with the month, if someone misses it by a day or whatever, then they're out 2 months. And you all have always left that to staff's discretion. So, I'd like to leave at least the deadlines themselves to our discretion. But if there's a point where you say, I have to have the packet, on Wednesday prior to the Monday meeting, then we'll just have to move the deadlines around accordingly. But we have tried to, accommodate the public as much as we can.
Leslie, is there a possibility to maybe get a draft like we do with other documents where we get a draft and then we get we get a draft agenda and there's nothing that while you're composing things for us to brief before? Because just to save some time, because there's a lot when we finally get the revised package and it's put together and we get it, and there's 398 pages now. I get that a lot of it is repetitive from the previous meeting, and it's easy to browse over because we've already discussed it. But is that a possibility while you're constructing to get? Because we're paperless, so to speak. We get them on our
maybe there's.
Let her finish, please.
I mean, I guess to break it down a little bit, do you really want to get the information, the details in the packet, or do you want to see like the agenda, or do you want to see the staff report, or do you want to see all of it? Because depending on, the agenda is being put together sort of as we go along. So sending you out a draft agenda is simple. It's it's going to change.
I'm not saying multiple,
but sending out multiple packets, I mean that's a different level of organization that would need to happen. So I guess the question is, what is it that you want to see so far in advance, if anything?
Well, you guys are given the deadlines already in advance for the year, so you know that the non-public agenda items are due a week before the meeting. So you guys have the option to come into the office the day after the deadline and review what's been submitted. But what happens with us is that we review the applications that have come in, but there's missing information, and then we have to call, and we have to recall or send them an email or reminder, like, look, we need this now, we need this now. So that's where a lot of the stuff comes in at the last minute also, is just waiting for the applicant to submit what we're looking for in order for us to move forward, for you guys to understand what we're proposing.
So, one of the reasons why I brought up the idea behind a consent agenda, and I had a nice long talk with Andrew about this, was that there's been a lot of balking about how long the meetings have been taking. All right? This was an attempt to take a lot of things that we've been doing routine and compress it down even further. All right? And I understand even like the HDC does consent agenda right now. So that's all this was an attempt to try to streamline the process down a step further. Do we need all the details at this point? I don't think so. But I think to know what's coming up, what you guys need to either have and say, because all the A&Rs, secondary dwellings, if I'm hearing you correctly, tertiary dwellings are doing a week in advance. I don't think we necessarily need the details, but it would help to have them.
Right. I mean, we're reviewing the application, but sometimes they don't have all the information that we need.
Plus, she doesn't scan them one here, one
So
here,
I
one
wait
here,
till
one there. She's got to
we're
scan the
reviewing
whole
the
thing.
plans, and we're looking at it.
Can we hear from her, please?
We're reviewing the plans, and the proposal that they're presenting before us
Yeah.
doesn't make sense, or it's not accurate that we're asking them to submit a new site plan.
Yeah.
So, Barry, I think it would be really simple for staff to send out an agenda, a draft agenda to you all for review.
Yep.
You know, sometime on Tuesday ahead of the meeting, because everything has to come in by Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, you know, inserting it. It's not, you know, heavy detailed work. It's not the full staff report. And that way you all would have an
Right.
idea of, you know, what's going to be coming up. And while, you know, maybe a few things filter in later in the week, at least you would have the bulk of the information and then you would get the update. I mean, does that work?
That's great for me.
Does that work for you guys? What's that?
I'm just saying that it can be a lot. So just, you know, I think that's what we try to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, sometimes we're dealing with the deadline. Sometimes people want to extend it. We're so accustomed to helping people, which is great. But sometimes we don't get, you know, we've got the application for an A&R, but we might not have the plan. Same thing, even some of these special permits, where we have the application, but we're still waiting for that technical plan.
All right, but we're not talking special permits. We're only talking the front end of the agenda, which is basically the A&R, second dwellings, tertiary dwellings, and then probably Form Js.
That's what she was just talking about, not special permits. Sometimes they get an extended deadline to Tuesday or so, if not Wednesday, because they don't have to push the agenda into the town clerk's office until a little bit later in the week. And then Catherine's gonna have to, those guys are gonna have to go through every single thing that came in on Monday, just so we can have a draft on Tuesday. I'm not, as a former staff member, I don't support them having to go through an extra step.
With that said, with you being able to get the agenda a week ahead of time, having the deadline moving up, I would be in favor of it, but I'm only one person.
I'm not with that at all.
So you'd be in favor of it, is what I'm hearing you say. Catherine?
Tuesday probably doesn't work best. Wednesday is probably better, just because people come in at 4:30, walking in at the last minute, and then I don't review it till the next day to see what they wanted, or I have just left exactly at 4:30. So, but I can definitely put a draft agenda together for you guys by Wednesday.
Yeah, and I think the focus here again is just to try to streamline the front end of what we're doing.
I thought we did that tonight, it took 5 minutes to get through, what, 4 sections? What's the big deal?
The big deal is
Literally 5 minutes to get through all of that stuff, and then we got right to where we needed to, which is
all right.
special permit.
But okay. All right. I mean,
It'll take
whatever.
me a minute to tell you I have a conflict. Oh, really?
Would it be nice?
I usually know ahead of time.
Pardon?
I usually know, try to know.
Is there? Well, it would be nice to know it in advance. I think for the rest of the board as well too. No.
No? What difference?
Why?
What's some of your business when I have a conflict on if I'm not sure about it ahead of time?
I think that's.
When I get here, I definitely have a conflict, and I say it on the record.
I know you do.
Which I have to.
All right. So I hear you don't like it. I got that. But
On their behalf.
Well, maybe.
well, I'm not necessarily hearing on their behalf that that there is a workable solution,
Wednesday.
which may work well for them. Again, this wasn't etched in stone. This was just to try to figure out if this is workable. But, pardon?
No, we're talking about getting a draft agenda on Wednesday. That's it.
Well, to try and streamline to save time, but it might be interesting to note that the Richmond Group has really, in the last year or two, have taken up a lot of time. So once we're coming to a close at that might also be
true,
saving a lot of time for 5-hour meetings until 11 o'clock, where in the past we've gone 4.5 to 5 hours. So. Not to say that we won't have a large development again, but.
You know, there's not.
I still think, you know, I hate to say it, but I feel like I've been on it for a while, is when we were 2 meetings a month.
I hear you.
You didn't have as many, when there's a lot of
But
special permits going, it sort of just takes time. They were spread out before they skipped over that next meeting, John, and would go to the next month. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The deadline would, it would flip to the next, not the next meeting, but the weekend after.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
the meeting after.
But
I want to get on this other thing, to Joe's little second dwelling-y thing. I'm jumping to the consent part now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, because it's part of it.
Yeah.
It is.
Well-
I mean, I hate to say it, and I don't want to be against the consent,
Yeah.
but I don't know if we're going to save any time, because we still are going to have the recusals for Joe and Linda
Yep.
occasionally. And then we're going to have the Joe thing with the perimeter plan, the survey. He looks at every one of those and sees which ones have a stamp on
I
the
know.
original application. And we've already got our town council thingy on that. And it is ridiculous, but we can't, it's his right to do it.
Correct.
So, that's slowing us down. So that's gonna make it harder to make a consent work,
Whatever.
Barry, you know what I'm saying? Because it's true. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know
But
how to do that. Are they gonna have
Real-
to know already what Joe's don't like with the?
that was
That's
the whole,
unbelievable.
because what I can,
No,
right.
I mean, that's good if we can do that, but is
Right.
that gonna be able to work?
But if we know in advance about what you need to recuse from as well, like his stuff all of a sudden becomes not like, I need to recuse from this, I need to recuse. It's just like, boom, blanket, I know where that's going.
Yeah.
That could be,
You don't
so,
have to recuse individually on the record.
Yeah, that's true.
You cannot not recuse on the record at a public hearing. We may know my one here and there.
That's true.
We may know his 4 on a secondary dwelling in particular. But you've got to recuse at a meeting if he's going to do that
He can-
every single time. You've got
he
to
can-
do it at the meeting.
he can, and he will do that.
That's not
He
fair.
will do that. Well, you know what, this was, this, well, I'm not going to get upset, but I am going to say to you, this was, again, I mean, I took in earnest what you said. Right.
You went really fast.
And the other thing, and I want to, Barry, I'm gonna really peel back the onion a little bit for you. 'cause you've been
Yeah, but you know what? Hang on. Okay, but hang on for a second, okay? You guys are trying hard. This is a little bit of a bother, and I got to say something to you. When you try hard to convince me otherwise, you have this incredibly bad habit of cutting people off. So just do me a favor, please just give me the few seconds to finish my thoughts, just like I do for you guys. Well, no, I'm just saying, I watched that a lot, and it really kind of, you need to yield so that everyone has their opportunity to express their thoughts. Not constantly, and I'm not saying to you personally, I'm saying as a board we need to be cognizant of that. So listen, I'm fine with whatever you guys want to do. It was an attempt to try to streamline the process, but what I really don't want to hear in the future is we're taking too long with stuff. Okay? All this is trying to be sensitive toward what you've brought up, fine, but I don't want to hear the converse either that things are taking too long. All right? If you've got better ideas to streamline the process, I'm all for that. But it's great to bring those things up, but if you don't have a solution for it either, then it becomes a moot point.
I never thought they were taking too long with these A&Rs, secondary dwelling.
I'm talking.
I never thought any of that was taking too long vis-a-vis tonight. We whipped right through that stuff. Preliminary plans.
Right. Respectfully, you're focusing on one thing. I'm trying to focus on the bigger picture.
You can't whip through the special permits. It's just nowhere to go.
Respectfully, again, I've never talked about the special permits.
No, the rest of the
So
stuff,
stop.
pretty fast.
Never mind.
I think we just have to look at anything that we can suggest as an offer doesn't necessarily have to be received, but it's good constructive workshop to see if we can formulate something, and then if it doesn't work, let it go.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
My little thing, I wanted to kind of drudge up an old thing.
Yep.
This is relevant, okay, we just forget it. The reason that we can do consent very easily, because staff knows what they're doing. In the old days, second dwellings used to be, we were widening roads and creating this massive nightmare on some of them roads, Barry. Remember when we used to get, well, we gotta do this for this one house. You think they were building a subdivision.
14-foot wide, 16-foot
You know, and so
wide,
now,
18-foot wide.
with the way things work with the staff recommendations, are somewhat not, we're not worried about some of the things that we're requiring, because I know we've already fixed all those things. So Barry, you know what I'm saying? If we were trying to do this 7 years ago, we weren't. So 6 years ago, we would have had, too many things we would have been pulling out second dwellings, finding something wrong, and we would end up slowing down the meeting even further. So bear that in mind. The reason that we can even consider this is because we have things fixed that never worked to get to the consensus. Does that make sense, what I said? Kyle's been here a while.
Good.
I just wanted to say a couple of things that I've observed from the alternate's chair. In the time that I've been here, about 3 years, I haven't seen, in my opinion, the beginning of the meeting with the A&Rs and the secondary dwellings taking an inordinate amount of time with various recusals and people not being able to sit on them. And I do appreciate, Mr. Chairman, you wanting to streamline at the front end to do that. But I haven't seen, what I have seen is the public hearings for the applications have been the real meat and potatoes of this meeting. We have been in the boom time since I got on this board 3 years ago. And what I see is a huge amount of workload for special permits, major commercial developments, residential subdivisions. We're loaded up, and we don't have a second meeting per month. So I think that, and also there has been some mitigation for the time of the meeting. Just in the last couple of weeks, we voted to go to 6 o'clock. And I think that helps. I think that helps a lot, because I think in most cases you're going to be done with A&Rs and secondary dwellings within that half hour.
Sure.
So then you can start right in on public hearings by 6:30. So I think that's going to be very helpful. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that me personally, I would rather not see more work put on staff's shoulders to prepare for the meetings, as far as bumping up deadlines and bumping up paperwork further back for the upcoming meeting. I think it works. We all received the email on Friday evening from Catherine regarding the packet being available on the website. So that was 72 hours ahead of the meeting or whatever it is. And I just wouldn't want to see an additional workload be put on staff for these changes. And I'm fairly comfortable with starting at 6, and I know I didn't have a vote on that, and I think we're going to be done with the front end stuff by 6:30 on 9 out of 10 cases, and you're going to be fine. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
And we got one today that was revised today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't have a problem with that, getting one on the desk.
All right, but you still want to do things as break aparts. So you just want to focus on A&Rs, you want to focus on second dwellings, you want to focus on tertiary dwellings, right?
And let's try to get with Linda saying Wednesday, so that we know ahead.
And just in those 4 areas.
No, that's
Yeah.
a good try.
Yeah.
prior to, by Friday.
Yeah, no, that would be, I just think, like I said, this has really just been, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening, and it's just trying to.
I'm surprised Joe figures that stuff out so fast. But, yeah,
Can-
that will give him another couple days, give Linda, her, no, she probably already knows anyway, but, anyway, so. Can I ask a question? Something I haven't.
Are we going to go off topic from where we are right now?
It's about
On-
the March meeting. I asked him about it, but I want to make it official to ask if we can move it to the 6th.
I don't know.
Regular meeting to the 6th. Yeah.
What day is that?
Well, it's like a
Can-
late meeting, it's like a late, the way the weeks work. So the first week is really like the second week almost, you know what I'm saying?
Can I,
Surprisingly, I got it.
no.
But it's on a Monday, it's
Back the second week.
Yeah.
I mean, I just,
So we're,
said-
yeah, we're jumping in back one.
March 6th.
Yeah. What day, Monday, Tuesday, what day?
It's a Monday, March 6th.
it's Monday,
And-
it just moves.
I have no problem.
Okay. And that one, if we move that back a week, we may, well, we may have to move some deadlines around, because school vacation week is the week leading up to that.
Right.
So
No,
a lot
is
of
it?
Yeah, but we'll
people
be back on.
will be away. So it's no big deal. I mean, that's not a big deal. I'm just alerting you.
Well, Catherine, the school vacation. Holly has school vacation. You have school vacation. You have school vacation. That is not a good idea.
What?
The 6th. They're all on school vacation the week before. If we move it to Thursday, March 8th,
9th.
9th, would that be helpful?
I know it wouldn't be for,
Or leaving the 9th?
No, I'm leaving,
Can you mow in March
I'm
13th?
leaving the 10th. Never mind,
So
sorry.
Thursday, March 9th.
Yeah, I-
would give you a
Wednesday
little room
is-
after school vacation to get back.
yeah, unfortunately, I can't do it though.
Can you mow in that meeting,
Previous
Matt?
commitment.
Or is it just, can you mow in that meeting?
I'm just trying to just see what.
So,
What days are you going?
but help me out here, what was the problem with the 6th?
Everybody gets back from school vacation that day. 4 people are involved, 5 people involved in school vacation.
Well,
And if you
but,
can't get back on Sunday, we all come back on Monday.
It's a week before that.
but
Yeah,
That's 1 week reset.
they would be back, they
Well,
have to be back for school on Monday.
A lot of people don't. We all came back
But
on
this-
Monday because you couldn't get
I'm-
back here on Sunday.
I'm just, Mr. Chairman, my only point was I'm making a public announcement to anyone who's listening to the video. If we change the hearing date, we're going to have to change the submission. And that's fine. Well, I mean, staff can do that. That's not a big deal. I just am pointing out that that's going to need to change.
I mean, I'd be cool with the 6th. I really would.
I'm okay with the 6th. I'm just wondering, is
Do
it
we-
a burden for the staff to
Are you
school
guys,
vacation?
would you guys be good with the 6th?
Yes. 6th is fine.
How are you going to do the packet if you're not here and you're not here?
I'll be here.
School vacation. If they're here.
Okay, just keep that in mind. If they were both gone away,
Right.
there's nobody to do the packet, there's nobody to do anything.
I think you've just heard from Catherine and Holly that
Well,
they're,
now we're making them stay. They can't go anywhere even if they want.
are we making you stay? All right, so let's get that, you know what, let's not put words in their mouth.
What we just did is made them stay for school vacation week, because who's going to do the packet? Who's going to do the posting? If they both, for some reason, wanted to go
Linda.
away on school vacation,
Linda.
they cannot now go.
Linda,
And
You guys can call me in. I can help. Come on, I want to get
If
something done.
Catherine had to come in on her week off.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
no, that's okay, no, I might join you at that point.
Catherine came in, just so you know, she was off during school vacation right between Christmas and New Year's, and she came in several times anyway. That's wrong.
Well, and to clarify my earlier point, it was simply about deadlines. And Matt, I appreciate you, or Nat, clarifying about the 2 meetings and things, but I just want to point out, it was to take some load off staff if that was an issue. It's obviously not an issue, so my previous comment isn't relevant. But my comment about coming in and helping out,
I would agree with you. If it was really that bad, fine. Call. Oh, for God's sake. We're not incapable of learning us. That's uncalled for.
I'm sorry if that was.
No. And that's why you have Leslie and Andrew at the helm here to determine the staffing needs and what has to happen.
It's, people go back to school the 6th.
Oh, they do?
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't know that.
So. All right.
Well.
All right, can we move along then? Are we good? Are we good here at this point?
Yes.
All right, so Leslie, you had other things for us because we're getting off tangent here right now.
I did I?
Could I have your attention, board members, please?
Did
Thank
I?
you.
I already have my stuff back. Oh,
No, you're not. No, she still has stuff to do.
no, we just had the warrant article discussion just on there, just in case anything came up. We don't have anything
Okay.
new to share. I think most of you, some of you were at the Board of Selectmen meeting before Christmas when they made a commitment to put any planning board suggested articles on the warrant, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's really it. You guys have a little presentation in your packet, just so you can familiarize yourself with the maps and sort of what we're working on.
Yeah, thank you.
No.
No. That's not even a discussion I want to entertain right now. Okay, so we're going to move along at this point. So just a reminder that you've got a meeting on January 26th as well too for your warrant articles. Was there anything else, Leslie?
And that's at 4:30.
4:30.
Yeah.
No. Really?
He may be planning something, but I'm not aware of anything
Okay.
specific at this point.
So the 19th at 4 and the 26th, at what time?
4:30.
Thank you.
And the 26 is,
Or we'll do it.
26 is upstairs at the training room.
The
Well,
night,
but they'll let us know.
we'll let you
Let
know.
us know on the 19th.
The 26th
Upstairs,
is
it'll be
definitely
in the
upstairs.
training room on the
Yeah.
26th.
And we'll let,
Okay.
One's at 4, one's at 4.
Is there any other business before the... Leslie, did you have anything else? I'm so sorry.
no?
Is there anything other business to come before the board? Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you.